The protagonist of this manhwa is one of the most average-looking people you could imagine, and he earns a living working at a logistics center. Kim Jangum isn't exactly fond of his job, and it quickly becomes clear why. When he tries to start a casual conversation with a robot stationed beside him, the machine simply ignores him and continues with its tasks. This is precisely what bothers him about his workplace. The logistics center is fully staffed with advanced AI robots that perform nearly all of the physical labor. Jangum's role is to supervise the operations, but there's not a single human colleague around to talk to. He often feels somewhat disconnected, longing for a hint of real human connection, and occasionally wonders if he's in the wrong place altogether. It all began around 2 months ago, shortly after he finished his military service. That was when his streak of misfortune seemed to kick off. The first major incident was his parents relocating to Wjongbu. As a small reward for his military discharge, they covered the deposit and 6 months' rent for his small studio apartment, leaving him to live on his own near his old school. And so, his solitary life began. Although he was financially comfortable due to government support and the assistance from his parents, Jangum decided to take his time searching for a job without rushing, hoping to find the ideal position. However, things didn't go smoothly. He encountered rejection after rejection without even getting a chance to showcase his skills. After a month of unsuccessful job hunting, Jangum was starting to lose his mind from sheer boredom. One day, while wasting time, he ended up complaining to his sister about his current situation as a jobless, struggling brother. Predictably, his sister seized the opportunity to poke fun at him, turning their chat into a teasing session. He'd heard that delivery companies had started using AI robots to make work easier, and many people were getting jobs as operators in these companies. Intrigued, he decided to apply, and that's how he ended up in this gloomy place, where he has no one to talk to. Just as we're discussing this, someone calls out to him, a man who looks cranky and unapproachable at first glance. He has the demeanor of a strict manager, fitting the role perfectly. The senior employee informs him that they're out of tuna stock, even though the system shows some still available. He instructs Jangum to check the warehouse for any missing stock. With a forced smile, Jangum agrees, even though he finds the robots warmer than his ice-cold senior. As soon as Jangum steps into the warehouse, the door behind him begins to close. He quickly starts searching for the tuna his senior mentioned. After rummaging around, he finally spots the stock, climbs up a riser, and grabs it. Just then, he hears a loud bang as the warehouse door slams shut. He tries the handle, but it won't budge. He calls his supervisor, Shin, but there's no response. He briefly considers dialing 911, but decides against it, thinking it's not an emergency since he's not trapped in a freezer. Instead, he takes a selfie and sends it to his sister, letting her know he's stuck in the warehouse. At first, she jokes about his situation, but then suddenly mentions hearing a building collapse outside her home. This immediately worries Jangum, and he calls her to check if she's safe. When she picks up, there's only silence on her end, making him wonder if she's playing a prank. But before he can process it, the entire warehouse starts trembling, and an emergency alarm blares. The scene descends into chaos as announcements urge everyone to evacuate immediately. Trapped in the warehouse with no idea of what's going on outside, he starts banging on the door with his fists, hoping someone will hear. In desperation, he tries to call 911, only to discover that his cell signal is down. He feels like he's losing his mind, and the idea that there might be an all-out war happening outside only makes it worse. Suddenly, he hears something pounding on the main door from the other side, each hit leaving a massive dent in the steel door, as if it were as fragile as paper. His hands tremble as he instinctively pulls them away from the doorknob, sensing that whatever is going on outside is beyond his control. He's certain that even the slightest noise would be his undoing. Sweating and terrified, he collapses to his knees, relieved as the pounding on the door finally stops. Yet the chaotic sounds and screams outside are still loud enough to fill him with dread. 3 days have passed since that horrific day, and he's still trapped inside the warehouse, surviving on whatever food he can find. No one has come to look for him, and he's convinced that something catastrophic must have happened outside. He wonders if a war has broken out and almost feels relieved to be stuck in here, thinking he might not have survived if he'd been out there. The alarm, which had been blaring continuously, went silent yesterday, allowing him to sleep at least, though he's unsure how much longer he can hold out with his battery draining. This might be his final message to the outside world. He's praying that a soldier or someone from his country will find him soon and protect his family. Just when he thinks things couldn't get any stranger, a system window suddenly appears before him, informing him that he has been selected and should check his awakened abilities. At first, Jangum thinks he must be imagining it, but then another message pops up, revealing that he has acquired a personal subspace to store objects. He starts to wonder if the tuna he's been eating for the last 3 days had something strange in it, maybe a bit of hallucinogen. Suddenly, another digital notification appears, indicating that a target has been selected and asking if he wants to store it. Without hesitation, he agrees, and the next moment, he finds himself falling, landing hard on solid ground outside. Scrambling to his feet, he looks around, only to find himself surrounded by rubble and complete devastation. As he scans the area, he spots his senior lying dead nearby, and the sight makes him nauseous. System windows continue flashing, but he's too busy throwing up after seeing the lifeless body. Then, the system informs him that a compatible operating system has been found and is currently being installed. Suddenly, he hears footsteps approaching from behind, and a massive shadow looms over him. He immediately realizes this shadow doesn't belong to a human. As the view pans out, it reveals an orc-like creature with sharp fangs and a huge, blood-covered body. Jangum starts sweating heavily, trying to stay calm and hoping his fears aren't real. He desperately tries to rationalize, telling himself that the loud roar he heard 3 days ago could have been from a gorilla or a bear. But he doesn't dare look back. Instead, he breaks into a run, sprinting for his life. His panic peaks as he understands that he's being pursued by an actual monster. He races wildly, accidentally stepping on someone's remains along the way. He has no clue why an orc-like creature is here or why it's chasing him, but he knows one thing: if he doesn't escape soon, he's doomed. Just then, another system window pops up, announcing that synchronization is complete and asking if he'd like to enter the subspace. With no hesitation, Jangum quickly confirms, as the monster is almost upon him. Just as the creature's hand swings at him, he dives into the portal, narrowly escaping. Once inside, he finds himself safe, while the monster is left on the other side, unable to follow and growling in frustration. Confused, Jangum wonders why the creature can't enter. A hovering drone appears and explains that nothing can enter his subspace without his permission, as he's the master of it. The drone further clarifies that the subspace is completely under his control. Jangum is stunned to see the drone talking and feels a strange sense of déjà vu. Looking around, he realizes he's back in what appears to be the logistics center warehouse, but this time, it's part of his new subspace. The entire area is filled with the same robots he saw before. The system announces that since he's entered the subspace for the first time, he'll receive a reward for completing the tutorial, a mana stone. The stone materializes in his hand, but before he can fully understand what it is, the monster outside starts banging against the portal, jolting him back to reality. Panicked, he quickly asks the system if it's really sure that the monster can't get inside. The system reassures him that nothing can enter without his permission. Another system window flashes, detailing that the logistics facility is a 5-story structure covering an area of 10,000 pyong, around 33,000 square meters. It's equipped to handle shipments at a speed of 60 kilometers per hour, with a size limit of 2 meters per shipment. Jangum is as puzzled as anyone would be, trying to make sense of this information. The system then notifies him that only 2 minutes remain until maintenance. Confused, he asks if the facility will shut down in 2 minutes. The drone confirms and explains that he can use the mana stone to power the subspace and keep it operational. Since he currently has 1 mana stone, it will sustain the facility for the next 24 hours. Amazed by the mana stone's efficiency, Jangum listens as the drone explains that when the logistics center was transferred to the subspace, the energy system was adapted to rely on mana stones. This transformation allows the facility to run on magical energy within the subspace environment. Jangum wonders aloud if any of this is even possible or if he's trapped in some kind of sci-fi nightmare. Suddenly, the facility's lights shut off, and the drone starts flashing emergency lights. The system informs him that the power supply has been cut off, and if it's not restored soon, Pax Fresh and other perishable items could start to spoil. Pax Fresh, he learns, is one of the services that handles the storage and delivery of fresh produce, meat, and ready-made meals in frozen and refrigerated conditions. Realizing that the monster is still lurking outside, Jangum understands that the outside world is essentially a war zone, and in such conditions, access to food could mean the difference between life and death. With the power to the cold storage cut off, this is a serious issue. He asks the drone if the mana stone can truly replace electricity. The drone confirms it, and Jangum then inquires how he can get more mana stones. The drone explains that they can be obtained from creatures from another world. It's clear that Jangum isn't too excited about facing the massive monster outside, a creature strong enough to tear him apart with ease. He instructs the drone to use the mana stone to power the facility for now, then heads deeper into the warehouse to gather some weapons. Inside, he collects a few weapons, and a system window pops up showing the cost of each item. With limited supplies, he worries about running out of stock if he uses them recklessly. He's also uncertain if the weapons he has will even pierce the creature's tough skin. Deciding that a slow, cautious approach might be smarter, he plans to wear the monster down gradually rather than trying to take it out in one hit. Since the monster can't enter his subspace, he doesn't need to rush. He can focus on inflicting minor injuries while conserving his resources and ensuring he doesn't run out of weapons too quickly. Jangum hurls an axe at the creature, but it only grazes its body, which infuriates the beast even more. Realizing his initial strategy isn't as effective as he'd hoped, and with his weapon supply running low, he decides to give the heavy axe another shot, hoping it'll pack more punch this time. He asks the system how many axes are left in stock and is stunned to hear there are still 15 available. Expecting only a few, this number takes him by surprise. He quickly inquires about the storage location and, upon reaching the area, discovers something incredible: the axes are duplicating infinitely. The system explains that these items can be replicated endlessly through a process that allows for infinite duplication. Although they can be damaged or altered, they'll never run out. This revelation leaves Jangum in awe. With an infinite supply of weapons, he no longer has to worry about conserving them. Relieved, Jangum realizes he can now throw as many axes as he wants at the monster without the fear of running out. He jokes to himself that his shoulder might give out before the creature does, but at least he has a seemingly endless arsenal. The system then reveals an interesting feature: he doesn't even have to throw the weapons manually. Apparently, he can ship products directly from his subspace to the outside world. The system explains that shipping can be done every 30 seconds, but the speed can be increased by improving his skills. Jangum quickly asks how to activate this feature, and the system tells him to simply think of the registered item and say ship for it to be launched automatically. Without missing a beat, Jangum says, "Ship," and an axe zooms through the air at incredible speed, smashing right into the monster's grotesque face, taking it down instantly. He realizes the drone was the one that threw the axe, and when he asks about the throw speed, the system confirms that the default shipping speed is 60 kilometers per hour. Now Jangum understands what the system meant by shipping speed earlier. The system also reveals that he can adjust the speed up to a maximum of 75 kilometers per hour. To go beyond that, however, he'll need to level up his skills. Naturally, Jangum asks how to enhance his skills, and the system explains that he can use mana stones for upgrades. Remembering the monster he just defeated, he realizes that hunting more of these creatures could help him progress. He quickly gears up from the facility, grabbing lightweight combat boots that cost around 50,000 KRW and matching tactical pants for about 78,000 KRW. Once fully equipped, he also purchases a detailed map of the Seoul metropolitan area and a permanent marker. He draws a circle around the Gwangjin district and marks neighboring areas in a specific order, mapping out his route. With a solid plan in place, he decides to start with the closest marked district and make his way toward his final destination. Jangyum plans to head to Wjongbu to reunite with his parents. Starting from Gunpo and lacking a car, he realizes the journey ahead is going to be long and challenging. Although it's not as fast as a car or motorcycle, a regular bicycle becomes incredibly valuable in a post-apocalyptic world. It's practically a Lamborghini now. Without hesitation, He hops on the bike and starts pedaling through the desolate landscape. After about 30 minutes, night falls, and he has already taken down around 12 orcs along the way. Jangyum then shares with us that he's learned something valuable from fighting these orcs. But before he can explain his discovery, a new monster suddenly appears and charges at him. Jangyum quickly retreats into his subspace, leaving the creature outside. While the monster is temporarily stalled, he uses his shipment ability again to launch an axe at high speed. Unfortunately, the axe misses the mark slightly, only injuring the creature's shoulder. To use his shipment ability again, Jangyum has to wait for the 30-second cooldown, and there's also a 10-meter range limit. Despite these limitations, he realizes that his skills are impressive and can be further enhanced by collecting mana stones and upgrading them. Aside from shipment, Pax's system has another useful function, which he'll soon uncover. The monster then notices the axe flying back through the portal and, before it can react, the weapon comes back with force, striking it squarely in the face and sealing its fate. This secondary function of Pax's ability is called product retrieval. It automatically brings dispatched items back, which is as convenient as the shipment ability itself. Using the retrieval skill, Jangyum quickly collects the mana stone from the fallen monster. He wonders why he can't retrieve the mana stone before killing the creature, and the system explains that the stone only becomes his property after the monster is defeated. Accepting this, Jangyum steps out of his subspace and reveals another crucial piece of information he's learned about this post-apocalyptic world. The orcs aren't the only dangerous creatures here, there are also winged monsters, and he knows it's going to take significant effort to bring one of them down. Suddenly, he hears cries for help, but before he can figure out where they're coming from, the scene shifts to another person named Choi, who is desperately running for his life. Exhausted, each of his steps grows heavier as a flying creature pursues him. The monster swoops down, slamming into Choi from behind and knocking him to the ground in pain. Another person trails behind Choi, and just as he's about to help his injured friend, the creature lands directly in front of him, blocking his path. Its fierce mouth drools as if craving human flesh. But strangely, the monster doesn't attack the person standing. Instead, it turns its attention to Choi, who is lying on the ground groaning. Realizing this, the man is shocked to see that the creature seems to be specifically targeting Choi, likely because he appears smaller and like an easier target. He has no idea how to confront this massive creature to save his friend, especially since he only has a small knife. He's doubtful it could even distract the monster. Suddenly, the sound of a bicycle bell rings out, echoing through the area. To everyone's surprise, it's Jangyum speeding towards them. The two men don't know what to expect, and before they can process what's happening, they see the monster pursuing them get hit by a projectile, sending it sliding across the ground from the impact. It turns out the monster was taken down by a single axe throw, leaving the two men in utter shock, struggling to comprehend what they just witnessed. Jangyum quickly checks if they're unharmed, but they're too stunned, jaws dropped, trying to understand how someone on a bicycle managed to defeat a flying wyvern with just an axe. They immediately ask Jangyum if he's a soldier and start bowing their heads in gratitude for saving their lives. Jangyum, happy to see them safe, points to his uniform and explains that he's an employee at Pax's FC, which is evident from the company attire he's wearing. This revelation leaves them even more astonished, as they assumed he was a skilled soldier due to his impressive abilities and composure. They're amazed that, even without being a soldier, he managed such a feat. If they hadn't seen it for themselves, they'd never believe someone could take down a wyvern with a simple axe throw while riding a bicycle. Jangyum is surprised to learn that they're familiar with the concept of abilities. One of the men confirms this, mentioning he has an awakened ability of his own, though it's just a modest driving skill that hasn't been useful in these circumstances. Choi, the other man, laughs and admits he feels envious, as he hasn't awakened any ability himself. Jangyum then asks if there are any other people around. Choi explains that they're in Block C, which has a logistics center where many people had initially gathered. Unfortunately, the monsters were drawn there as well, and most people were attacked, killed, or devoured. Only about 10 to 15 survivors remain, taking refuge in Block C's underground terminal. Choi further explains that they were out searching for a passable road for vehicles and gathering essential supplies when they were ambushed by the monster. His friend then suggests that instead of staying out here, Jang Yum should join them and head to their quarters on the 4th basement floor. That area has been free of monster attacks, so it's a relatively safe place where they can rest comfortably. They even offer him some light snacks. Jang Yum considers the offer, clearly intrigued by the mention of vehicles and eager for more information about working transportation options. Eventually, he decides to accept their invitation, though he's cautious and doesn't fully trust them. As they begin to walk, he takes one last look at the defeated monster lying on the ground. Discreetly, he retrieves the mana stone from the creature and places it in his subspace, relieved that the two men aren't aware of his ability. Knowing he has a backup plan gives him peace of mind. If things turn risky, he can escape into his subspace. After a while, they reach the basement quarters, where they see a man who appears to have just taken down an orc on his own. Choi rushes over to his friend, asking if everything is all right. The orc slayer reassures him, explaining that the orc likely wandered in by accident. Luckily, they managed to eliminate it without attracting attention, so no one was hurt. However, they now realize that this area may not be as secure as they once thought. On the other hand, Jang Yum feels a bit unnerved by how dangerous this place truly is. But he snaps out of his thoughts when the man who took down the orc asks about him. Choi explains that Jang Yum is the one who saved them from the wyvern and mentions that he used to work for PAX FC. He also adds that Jang Yum managed to kill the wyvern with a long-distance axe throw, leaving everyone amazed and eager to know more about his abilities. At that moment, a woman rushes over, thrilled to see the person who saved Yong-soo and Bong Cole. She's so grateful that she starts doing a little celebratory dance. The others gather around him, showering him with praise, while Jang Yum tries to downplay his actions, saying he just did what he had to do. As he's getting all this attention, Choi steps in, attempting to calm everyone down and telling them not to overwhelm the young guy. The orc slayer then speaks up, mentioning that everyone here has been working together for over a decade and that Yong-soo and Bong Cole are like family to him. Grateful for the rescue, he introduces himself as Lee Jinmak, the center manager of Dion Express Terminal, and even bows respectfully to Jang Yum. Once the introductions are complete, Jinmak gives Jang Yum a quick overview of the place. He explains that while they can't promise complete safety here, it's a lot more comfortable than the world outside. They have food and water supplies from the logistics center, so Jang Yum can help himself without any hesitation. Jinmak mentions that they have plenty of supplies and can restock from the logistics center if needed. However, Younggu interrupts, pointing out that the logistics center they're referring to has mysteriously disappeared. Everyone stares in shock, their jaws dropping at this unbelievable news. Jinmak quickly asks what this even means, and Choi confirms that the building is literally gone, explaining that this is why they were being chased by the wyvern. The group struggles to believe that such a massive structure could simply vanish. Finally, Jinmak comes to terms with the situation, reasoning that if monsters are real, then maybe it's not so absurd to believe that a building could disappear. Meanwhile, Jang Yum stands silently, and it's unclear if the disappearance of the logistics center has something to do with his subspace ability. Trying to calm everyone, Jinmak encourages them to stay focused and explains that they need to clear a path through the tunnel. He warns that staying here will only worsen the situation and tries to lift everyone's spirits, saying it's just a matter of timing. He adds that they'll start moving through the tunnel as soon as they're ready. The woman from earlier, now fired up, steps in to motivate the group. She reminds them that even without the logistics center, they still need to plan their next steps and insists they must push forward. Jang Yum turns to Jinmak, asking what pushing through actually means. Jinmak explains that everyone here has homes elsewhere, and vehicles are essential for travel. However, with the roads blocked, they need to find a way to clear the path. Jang Yum perks up at the mention of vehicles and asks for more details. Jinmak confirms that they have functioning vehicles but explains that all routes are obstructed. To the north, a golf course blocks the way, to the east, containers are piled up, and the southern Yangdong Expressway has been completely destroyed. The tunnel to the west is their only option, but unfortunately, it's occupied by a group of wyverns. Up until now, they've been able to survive by using supplies from the logistics center, but with that resource gone, they'll need to clear a path. Jinmak tells Jang Yum that he doesn't have to go through the tunnel since the blocked paths are primarily for vehicles, and there are alternate ways to escape on foot or by bicycle. But Jang Yum quickly responds that he needs a vehicle as well and decides that going through the tunnel is the best choice. The manager doesn't try to change Jang Yum's mind further and simply says he's welcome to join them if he's up for it. Jang Yum smiles and agrees, saying he'd be glad to work with them. However, he thinks it's probably best to keep his abilities hidden. While the group seems friendly, he knows they've been struggling to survive, whereas he was relatively safe in the logistics center. They may be running low on food and supplies, and he doubts they'll be completely open about their situation. Understanding the need for caution, he plans to stay alert and keep some secrets of his own. Jang Yum then turns to the manager and mentions he wants to check out the tunnel situation and assess the wyvern threat. Although he frames it as a scouting mission, he's actually planning to use his abilities to wipe out the horde of monsters and gather a good amount of mana stones in the process. The scene briefly flashes back to when he had saved up 5 mana stones after defeating several monsters. With these, he was able to reduce the cooldown on his shipping ability to just 5 seconds. This was when he unlocked new shipping abilities. The first option was precise delivery, which, as the name suggests, locks onto a target to ensure a direct hit. The second was simultaneous delivery, allowing him to ship 2 items at once. The third, automatic delivery, enables him to set items to deliver at timed intervals. Though these abilities sounded amazing, each one required 10 mana stones, and he was eagerly looking forward to seeing them in action, even though he wasn't quite sure what automatic delivery would do. In the present, he grins, pleased with his progress and excited for his scouting mission to earn even more mana stones. Or so he thought, until he finds himself unexpectedly stuck with Youngu, one of the guys he'd rescued earlier. When Jang Yum asks why Youngu is tagging along, Youngu explains it's too risky to go out alone. Jang Yum reminds him that he was the one being chased by the wyvern, but Youngu insists it doesn't matter, he can't let him go alone. Besides, Youngu is confident Jang Yum will come to his rescue again if needed. Jang Yum then recalls that Youngu mentioned he had a driver's ability, so he asks him if he can see any kind of message window or something similar that displays his ability. Youngu mentions that he hasn't seen any message windows or anything like that, but he has a strong feeling that he's awakened an ability, it just hasn't fully developed yet. This vague explanation doesn't exactly reassure Jang Yum, and he starts feeling uneasy. As night falls, their bike speeds down the road at an intense pace, with Jang Yum nervously sweating as he watches Youngu steer with one leg, trying to keep his balance. When Jang Yum asks why he's driving so recklessly, Youngu replies that there are too many cars on the road, making visibility difficult. Just then, Youngu spots a wyvern up ahead, and Jang Yum quickly tells him to stop since he can barely see. It seems the monster has detected their presence, and as it turns its fierce gaze toward them, Youngu nervously asks what they should do. At that moment, a projectile suddenly strikes the wyvern, taking it down in one hit, leaving Youngu baffled. Jang Yum, keeping his composure, tells Youngu to keep looking forward and not glance back. While saying this, he stealthily retrieves the mana stone from the wyvern and stores it in his subspace. Youngu then points out that he can see the tunnel up ahead. He slams on the brakes, and before Jang Yum can ask why they stopped, the reason becomes clear: a horde of monsters is crawling all over the area. Youngu is visibly terrified, and it wouldn't be surprising if he's on the verge of panic. As one of the monsters approaches, Youngu is convinced they're done for. Even with their electric bike, there's no way they can outrun so many wyverns. Bracing himself for the worst, Youngu feels his hope slipping away. But Jang Yum, realizing there's no other option, decides to use his subspace ability. He quickly opens his system and uses his mana stones to cut the cooldown of his shipping ability from 30 seconds down to just 5 seconds. Youngu, confused, asks what he's doing, but Jang Yum doesn't bother explaining. As the monster lets out a deafening roar, the surrounding creatures start closing in from every direction. Just in time, Jang Yum yells, "Ship," and a projectile crashes down, taking out the closest monster and saving Youngu. Still shaken, Youngu looks back, wide-eyed, and is stunned to see a portal open behind them. Jang Yum quickly collects the mana stones from the fallen creature and tells Youngu to stick close so he can keep him safe. Though still confused, Youngu agrees, having no idea what's going on or why a logistics center seems to be following them. More monsters appear, but one is swiftly taken down by Jang Yum's axe. As the others charge at them, Youngu panics and ends up diving into Jangyam's subspace. A monster slams into the subspace barrier, while Youngu stumbles backward, falling to the ground. The creature regains its balance and charges again, but Jangyam steps back into the subspace, and the monster crashes into the barrier once more, only to be defeated by another axe. Watching in awe, Youngu can barely believe what he's witnessing. Between the logistics center, the flying axes, and the defeated monsters, he's unsure what amazes him more. But one thing is clear, these monsters are mere pests to Jangyam, and this tunnel is just a minor obstacle for him to clear with ease. Reflecting on the others in the basement who needed a delivery vehicle for food and safe travel, Youngu realizes that for Jangyam, the vehicle is merely a mode of transport since he can handle threats effortlessly. A hint of jealousy creeps into Youngu's mind as he wishes he had such a powerful ability. It would make reaching his family so much easier. He's curious about how far Jangyam plans to go if he feels the need for a vehicle. Just then, they notice some monsters starting to retreat. Jangyam is impressed to see that these creatures are smart enough to flee instead of charging into danger. As Jangyam collects the mana stones, Youngu notices a blue stone hovering in the air and asks what it is. Jangyam, a bit surprised, asks if he's never seen a mana stone before. Youngu admits he hasn't, so Jangyam explains that he uses them to enhance his abilities. Youngu finally understands why Jangyam didn't bother extracting mana stones from the orcs earlier. Youngu points out that with powers like this, Jangyam could easily clear the entire tunnel on his own. Jangyam responds that he didn't come here intending to clear the tunnel, he just wanted to assess the situation. If he found it feasible, he would quietly break through without drawing attention to his abilities. Youngu apologizes for tagging along, but Jangyam reassures him that it's fine, admitting he didn't know the way to the tunnel anyway, so without Youngu, he wouldn't have made it here. Jangyam suggests they should head back, as the wyvern has retreated for now but might return soon. That's when Youngu asks how far Jangyam plans to travel that he feels the need for a vehicle. Jangyam explains that he's trying to reach his family, and his final destination is Wjongbu, near the Gangnam district. This revelation surprises Youngu, as his own destination lies along the same route. He tells Jangyam that he's heading to Indoan, which is on the way, and asks if it would be too much trouble to let him tag along until they reach Indoan. Jangyam hesitates, but Youngu continues, admitting he's not confident he can make it home safely even if he gets through the tunnel. His driving ability doesn't help in combat, but with Jangyam's monster fighting skills, he might actually stand a chance of reaching his family. Youngu then promises to help Jangyam reach Gangnam faster than anyone else and swears he won't be a burden. He even offers to provide food along the journey. Jangyam starts to see the value in this arrangement. Youngu's driving skills are definitely useful, and more importantly, if Youngu is on his side, he won't reveal Jangyam's abilities. It's a win-win situation, as Jangyam fears that if his powers became widely known, people might do anything to control or exploit him, even go as far as targeting him. While that might be overthinking, it's still better to be cautious. With this in mind, Jangyam finally agrees to let Youngu join him, and Youngu lights up with excitement. Jangyam tells him he'll handle clearing the tunnel and emphasizes that Youngu should keep his abilities a secret. He also asks Youngu to make sure everyone else stays out of his way. Youngu eagerly agrees, promising to ensure full cooperation from everyone. But things don't go as planned. Instead of keeping quiet, Youngu goes ahead and tells everyone that Jangyam will be able to clear the tunnel by himself using his awakened abilities. All they need to do is wait outside until he's finished, and then they can move forward. Jangyam is left in shock, realizing Youngu has just exposed the very secret he wanted to keep. The others are amazed by the news and eager to see how Jangyam is going to accomplish this feat. Youngu, meanwhile, seems all too happy to explain, while Jangyam curses his bad luck, knowing he's now in a tricky situation. In the end, Jangyam steps up and tells everyone that by tomorrow morning, he'll have the tunnel cleared for them. In his mind, helping them is the best option. With food supplies still available, the group can remain relatively calm, but once those supplies run out, chaos is bound to erupt. Clearing the tunnel is the wisest choice to ensure everyone can leave safely. The manager then approaches Jangyam, saying he won't pry into his abilities or ask any questions. Instead, he expresses his respect for Jang Yum's decision to help everyone and offers him food supplies from their reserves. This act of generosity surprises Jang Yum, as he hadn't expected such kindness. The manager explains that since Jang Yum risked his life to scout the tunnel, offering some food is the least they can do in return. Now that Jang Yum is even clearing the tunnel for them, the group feels they can never repay him enough for his kindness. They apologize, saying that all they can offer him right now are their sincere words of gratitude. Jang Yum tries to explain that he did it for himself, out of his own desire, and that they shouldn't feel the need to go to such lengths for him. He insists that the food should be saved for their families and urges them to keep it. However, Youngoo steps in, urging Jang Yum to accept the gesture, pointing out that refusing the food would make everyone feel awkward. Youngoo also reminds Jang Yum that he has a family to think about, just like everyone else. At that moment, Jang Yum sees how excited everyone is at the thought of reuniting with their loved ones, and he feels a pang of sadness, not wanting to let them down. As everyone enjoys their time together, the next day finally arrives, and they reach the entrance to the tunnel. Jang Yum tells everyone to stay back as he pedals his bike into the tunnel, determined to clear it out and return safely. As he approaches the tunnel, he starts spotting the monsters, but before we witness the battle, the scene flashes back to his childhood. In this memory, young Jang Yum is nursing a sore eye from a scuffle with his sister. He complains to his father, leading to another argument with his sister, which escalates into the two of them playfully fighting in front of their father. His father observes their closeness, reflecting that, as an only child, he always envied the bond between siblings. He tells them they don't realize how lucky they are to have each other, and that although they may argue now, they'll soon come to understand how precious family truly is. Suddenly, their mother bursts into the room, sparking a lively argument between the parents. In this moment, young Jang Yum feels the warmth and chaos of family life. The scene then shifts to the previous night, with Jang Yum remembering these family moments as he watches everyone else eagerly anticipating their own reunions. Knowing that he will clear the path for them, they spend the night together, basking in the warmth of hope and excitement. As midnight approaches and everyone falls asleep, Youngoo wakes up to use the bathroom and notices Jang Yum is missing. Concerned, he steps outside and asks the guards on duty if they've seen him. They tell him that Jang Yum mentioned going out for some fresh air a while ago. Youngoo decides to look around, and after walking further, he finally spots him. He quickly asks why Jang Yum isn't resting, and Jang Yum replies that he just can't sleep. Youngoo glances in front of him, utterly stunned to see that the entire vehicle is packed to the brim with food and supplies. Youngoo is baffled and asks why Jang Yum is giving away so much. Jang Yum casually explains that he only loaded about half of the supplies to avoid weighing down the vehicle, but assures him that this amount should be more than enough for everyone. Youngoo is even more stunned when Jang Yum mentions that this is the last vehicle he had to load, realizing that if this is the last one, then Jang Yum must have packed the other 15 vehicles with the same abundance of supplies. Jang Yum quickly asks Youngoo to keep this information a secret from the others. But Youngoo points out that if Jang Yum is giving away so much, what will they have left for their own journey? Jang Yum just smiles and assures him that they still have plenty of supplies remaining. This leaves Youngoo in complete awe, realizing that the amount Jang Yum just gave away exceeds what you'd find in an entire logistics center. He can't begin to fathom how massive Jang Yum's stock must be to allow him to be so generous. Back in the present, Jang Yum is effortlessly cutting down monsters as if it's no big deal. As he fights, he considers how much easier it would be if he could simply place everyone into his subspace and transport them to the other side. Unfortunately, the system informs him that with his current subspace level, this isn't possible. However, if he reaches subspace level 2, he could carry up to 20 people. To achieve this upgrade, he'd need to gather at least 100 mana stones. Jang Yum quickly does the math, estimating there are only about 40 monsters nearby, with a few already fleeing. Given these numbers, leveling up here isn't feasible. He realizes he'll need to find another way to level up since his goal is to eventually be able to place his own family into his subspace for protection. Suddenly, Jang Yum notices something unusual among the retreating monsters. A closer look reveals a particularly large and muscular wyvern, a clear sign of a boss-level creature. Even Jang Yum isn't entirely sure what he's up against. Back outside, everyone waits anxiously for Jang Yum to emerge from the tunnel. Some people are beginning to worry if he's okay in there. Finally, they see him pedaling out of the tunnel on his bicycle, as if he's just on a leisurely ride. His uniform is smeared with blood, which makes the group tense up, but they soon breathe a sigh of relief when they see a smile spreading across his face. The group erupts into cheers, celebrating the success of their mission. It's finally time for everyone to part ways and reunite with their families. They thank the manager for sticking with them until the end and wish him a safe journey home. Before they leave, Jang Yum hints that if they run into any trouble, they should open the cargo hold, where he's left a little gift that might be useful. Curiosity piqued, they exchange glances but eventually get into their respective trucks, starting their journey through the traffic. After crossing the tunnel, they wave goodbye one last time before going their separate ways. We then see Jang Yum sitting in the passenger seat, still deep in thought about the strange monster he saw in the tunnel. He's unsure if it was actually a wyvern, as it fled so quickly that he didn't get a clear look. He wonders if it might have been a leader or an adult version of the usual monsters, but his thoughts are interrupted by a disturbing crunching noise from under their truck. Looking near the tires, they realize the vehicle has run over some dead bodies, and the driver's face reflects the sadness of hearing bones break under the wheels. Jang Yum notices the regret on his friend's face, but they have no choice but to keep moving. With bodies and wreckage littering the road, there's no clear path, and it's a mess wherever they turn. He reflects that if his discharge had been delayed by just a few months, he might have ended up as one of those fallen soldiers. The situation outside is worse than he expected, with monsters still feasting on the corpses. Suddenly, Youngu calls out, snapping him out of his thoughts. As Jang Yum looks up, he sees the road ahead is blocked. Youngu points out that the barbed wire looks like it was set up by the military to contain something, so they'll need to find another route. He mentions there should be another bridge they can use, but just as he says this, Jang Yum notices something at the end of the barricaded bridge. Taking a closer look, they see a new type of monster, one they've never encountered before. It finally makes sense why the military blocked off this area. Youngu starts to panic, considering turning the vehicle around, but Jang Yum sees this as an opportunity to gain more mana stones and level up his subspace. Jang Yum then notices a narrow sidewalk along the road, perfectly lined with barriers on both sides. He quickly tells Youngu not to turn back and asks if he can drive the truck down that sidewalk. Jang Yum explains that he's come up with a plan to get through without retreating, and he's visibly excited at the idea of squeezing the truck through a literal pedestrian walkway. Youngu is stunned by this risky decision, especially when an orc appears ahead, scattering a group of mutant hounds as it blocks their path. The monsters weren't friendly toward each other at all. Despite the orc's advantage in size and strength, the mutated dogs had sheer numbers on their side. The poor orc didn't stand a chance against the ravenous pack, whose hollow jaws tore into its flesh without pause. Blood and flesh flew in every direction as the pack devoured it. Yongsu, watching from the truck, was horrified, even doubting the sanity of Jang Yum's plan to charge straight into that chaos. Seeing his friends worry, Jang Yum confidently asked Yongsu if he'd ever heard of a game where 3 different races wage war against each other. He explained it was a space strategy game called Stark, where players could play on customizable maps and adjust settings to fend off waves of enemies with limited units. The current situation, he noted, reminded him of his favorite map in that game, where strategic positioning and timing were key to survival. Yongsu, who was much older and unfamiliar with the game, had no idea why Jang Yum was telling him all this. But understanding wasn't necessary for his role, he just needed to follow Jang Yum's instructions. First, Yongsu had to reverse the truck back to the barbed wire barrier, tearing it down and making as much noise as possible to attract the attention of the mutant dogs who were engrossed in their bloody feast. Then, it was Jang Yum's turn to take action. He activated his system and decided to use a skill he hadn't planned on relying on, auto-ship. Spending 10 mana stones, he unlocked the ability, then instructed Pax to use all remaining mana stones to increase the shipping speed. Pax complied instantly, boosting the speed to 100 km per hour. With everything in place, Jang Yum was ready to lure the mutant hounds toward him. After their hearty meal, it was playtime. As the unsuspecting dogs charged, Jang Yum initiated his plan. A double-door refrigerator hurtled through the air, smashing straight into the pack and crushing them completely. The dogs had no idea what hit them. But it didn't stop with just one refrigerator. More came, one after another, decimating the hounds in mere seconds. Jang Yum quickly accumulated 12 mana stones and couldn't be happier about it. The upgraded shipping range and precision delivery skill he had improved while clearing the tunnel were proving to be highly effective. Now, instead of refrigerators, Jang Yum could throw axes with remarkable speed and accuracy, thanks to his newly enhanced precision delivery. However, he'd also noticed a limitation during his last use of the skill. It didn't track targets all the way to impact, requiring precise timing on his part to ensure maximum effect. The precision delivery skill had a limitation. It only slightly adjusted the direction based on the target's movement. This could be a major drawback against these mutant hounds, who weren't just fast, but incredibly agile. Even an axe flying at 100 km per hour could be dodged by these creatures if launched from a distance. On top of that, the hounds were relentless. Even when one of their own fell nearby, they continued their assault without hesitation. Considering the current delivery interval of 2.5 seconds, axes alone wouldn't be enough to fend off their relentless onslaught. However, the refrigerator, with its sheer size, was perfectly suited for the job. Jang Yum didn't even need to monitor the battlefield. The system automatically took care of any threats that approached. For now, Jang Yum could sit back and relax as the hounds kept charging, their furious howls echoing through the area. But against a continuous barrage of flying refrigerators, they didn't stand a chance. As the battle raged on, Yongsu dared to glance back, and his jaw nearly dropped in shock when he took in the sight. He had expected Jang Yum to be throwing axes, but here were refrigerators flying through the air, something beyond his wildest imagination. One flying refrigerator might have been something he could wrap his mind around. But a new refrigerator launching every 2 seconds? That was unbelievable. And it raised questions for Yongsu. Why would the logistics center have so many refrigerators in stock? He began to wonder if these weren't simply retrieved items being reused, as was the case with the axes. Yongsu was in complete disbelief, frozen in place as he watched the endless stream of flying refrigerators taking down hounds. He didn't even notice when Jang Yum came over and casually asked if he wanted something to eat. Snapping out of his daze, Yongsu finally processed the situation and asked Jang Yum a question to confirm his suspicions. Was it possible that Jang Yum's supply was actually infinite? Jang Yum looked a bit surprised by the question. He had assumed Yongsu had figured it out long ago, but apparently, he hadn't. Up until now, Yongsu had believed that Jang Yum was simply retrieving axes after each use to recharge them. The idea of having an infinite stock hadn't even crossed his mind. In fact, Jang Yum did collect the axes after use, but only to keep them from littering the road and potentially injuring someone by accident. Hearing this didn't make Yongsu feel any better. He was still struggling to grasp the idea of an endless supply. After a moment, Jang Yum asked again if he'd like something to eat. Yongsu, still emotionally drained from the day's events, replied that a Coke Zero and a light snack would be more than enough. As they ate in peaceful silence, the automated delivery system continued its merciless work in the background, scattering hounds left and right. Yongsu felt a little embarrassed for underestimating Jang Yum's abilities and for his earlier doubts. But despite his surprise, he was genuinely grateful for the food, even if it seemed limitless. Jang Yum was happy to share and expressed his gratitude to Yongsu for trusting him from the start. He assured Yongsu that if he ever needed anything, he just had to ask, as Jang Yum had nearly everything in stock. But Yongsu didn't want to take advantage of someone else's generosity. He felt that Jang Yum had already done more than enough by clearing the monsters and helping him get closer to his family. As they prepared to continue, Yongsu mentioned that, after they crossed this bridge, it would be only an hour's journey to his home. Jang Yum was glad to hear that his friend would soon reunite with his family. Yongsu was excited too, but a hint of fear lingered. He worried about what he might find when he arrived. He just hoped his family was safe and unharmed. Jang Yum could relate, as he too was anxious about the safety of his own parents and sisters. Wanting to lift Yongsu's spirits, Jang Yum decided to offer him a small gift. Noticing Yongsu's tattered clothes, he suggested that he shouldn't arrive home looking so worn out. With the hounds still busy in their futile attacks, they had some time to pick out something new. When Jang Yum asked what style he preferred, Yongsu felt slightly uncomfortable accepting even more help. But after all they'd been through, he didn't refuse. Ready to roll, Yongsu, now exuding cool determination, got back into the driver's seat. His movements were swift and precise, the kind that would make even Formula One drivers envious. Jang Yum barely had time to grab hold before Yongsu hit the gas, speeding forward without hesitation. The few remaining hounds didn't dare to challenge them as they roared down the narrow road. Yongsu's driving was like lightning. He handled everything on the road with expert precision. At this pace, he estimated it would take only 20 minutes to reach his home. Jang Yum, meanwhile, was hanging on tightly, feeling the truck bounce and swerve as if they were on a smooth highway rather than a broken, rubble-filled road. As the speed intensified, Jang Yum found himself pleading with Yongsu to slow down, looking on the verge of getting sick. Fortunately, his ordeal didn't last long. They finally arrived at Yongsu's house, or rather, what used to be his home. Now, it stood as little more than a ruin, remnants of a place that once held warmth and memories. Kim Jang-yum and Yongsu had finally arrived at their destination. From a distance, the apartment complex was a dismal sight. The structure was already old, and the recent attacks had left it nearly demolished. Surrounding buildings had suffered the same fate, reduced to rubble in an area that was clearly not designed to withstand a monster apocalypse. The roads were littered with debris, remnants of broken structures, yet oddly, no bodies could be seen. It was a stark contrast to the main streets, where corpses lay scattered everywhere. As the duo entered one of the crumbling buildings, Yongsu found himself standing before his apartment door for the first time in what felt like ages. His hand trembled as he faced the entryway, knowing his family might be just on the other side. All he needed to do was punch in the code, open the door, and walk inside, 3 simple steps. But fear paralyzed him, and he couldn't bring himself to move. Jang Yum watched from behind, understanding that his friend was struggling. They had raced here, covering what should have been an hour's journey in under 20 minutes, driven by Yongsu's desperation to reunite with his family. But now, standing here, he couldn't bear the thought of what he might find. If he opened that door only to see his loved ones gone, he wasn't sure he'd be able to handle it. Seeing Yongsu frozen in fear, Jang Yum decided it might be best if he took the lead. He gently tapped Yongsu's shoulder, offering to press the doorbell for him. Yongsu hesitated, unsure whether to accept, but ultimately nodded. No one would want to face such a heart-wrenching possibility alone, especially in these uncertain times. Jang Yum knew that if he were in Yongsu's place, he'd rather have someone else open the door, even if there was just a sliver of a chance his loved ones were gone. With a steadying breath, Jang Yum pressed the doorbell. They waited in tense silence, but before he even had to knock or press again, the door slowly creaked open from the inside. The 2 men turned, their eyes wide with hope and fear, as the door swung open. There, standing in the doorway, were Yongsu's wife and young daughter. They looked as if they'd been waiting for him all this time, despite the chaos that had descended on the world. Yongsu's eyes filled with tears as he took in the sight of his family, alive and well. Overcome with relief and joy, he rushed forward, embracing his wife and daughter in a tight, loving hug, holding them as if he'd never let go again. The fear that had gripped him melted away, replaced by pure gratitude for this precious moment. Jang Yum stood quietly on the sidelines, watching the heartfelt reunion unfold. He felt genuine happiness for his new friend, glad that Yongsu had found his family safe and sound. They hadn't even needed to knock or ring the doorbell. After a few tearful moments, Yongsu's wife finally noticed Jang Yum standing nearby in the hallway. With gratitude, Yongsu introduced Jang Yum as the friend who had helped him make it back safely. But just as he was being introduced, Jang Yum's vision began to blur, and the world around him started spinning. He felt his legs give way, his strength slipping away, and a deep exhaustion washing over him. Yongsu called his name, worry in his voice, but Jang Yum's senses were too foggy to respond. The last thing he saw was the hazy silhouette of Yongsu and his family. The light around him faded as his mind drifted. In his disoriented state, Jang Yim's thoughts returned to a distant memory. He remembered a time when he had curiously asked his father why he wasn't crying. His father had looked at him with a calm smile, explaining that saying goodbye to loved ones didn't always bring only sadness. Such moments stirred a mix of emotions, he said, inevitably bringing memories of shared times and warmth. It had been the day of his grandmother's funeral, and Jang Yim's father had felt a range of emotions: affection, gratitude, regret, and longing. He believed that farewells didn't have to be purely sorrowful. Reflecting on the years spent with his mother, he felt more grateful than sad. Grateful for the love she'd shown him, for her unwavering kindness that expected nothing in return. It was a lesson that a child might not understand immediately, but with time and experience, Jang Yim would one day recognize it himself. His father had trusted that his son would grow to understand that both giving and receiving love are never simple. From the memory of his grandmother's funeral, Jang Yim's mind shifted to a more playful recollection, a time when his sister would launch merciless pillow attacks on him. She'd wield pillows like weapons, taking great pleasure in playfully beating him to the ground. He would often end up crying, sometimes with a little bruise to show for it. His sister was relentless, laughing as she claimed she hadn't hit him that hard, insisting the pillow had softened the blow. But to young Jang Yim, it felt like the end of the world. He'd run crying to their father, eager to tattle, while his sister celebrated her victory once again. Kim Sol had managed to defend the family's championship title of sorts. The siblings argued and bickered constantly, yet to their dad, they were as close as any siblings could be. He would often lecture them about how, despite the resentment and annoyance they felt now, there would come a time when they'd truly understand the value of family and experience what real love feels like. Then their mom would step in, scolding her husband for talking too much instead of helping her with dinner preparations. Jang Yim remembered how delicious the steaming stew looked on the table that night. The whole family gathered around to eat. As they sat, Jan was busy on her phone, causing their mom to tease her about texting a crush, just typical middle school behavior, always messaging friends. On the TV, a professional fight carefully chosen by Kim Sol was playing, much to their mom's dismay, as she couldn't watch her dramas with Sol hogging the remote. As Sol prepared to enter middle school the next year, she was already set on joining the boxing or combat sports club and had even chosen a school with a strong sports program to pursue her passion. At that time, middle school still seemed a distant reality for young Jang Yim. Eventually, though, he graduated from primary school and enrolled in the same middle school his sister attended. On his first day, he stood under the freshman welcome banner, taking in the atmosphere around him, surrounded by unfamiliar faces. He noticed how some kids walked together, laughing as they headed to class. Their uniforms were new and crisp, while Jang Yim wore an oversized, hand-me-down uniform that looked far too big on his thin frame. Despite the difference, Jang Yim held his head high. To him, it was just a uniform, and he was determined to make the best of his middle school experience. But that positive outlook quickly faded when he became a target for bullies. In an attempt to help a classmate who was being picked on, Jang Yim found himself facing a group of delinquent upperclassmen. They responded with ruthless kicks, and he shielded his head, desperately trying to protect himself from their blows. Just as one of the bullies was about to strike him in the face, a hand grabbed the assailant's arm, stopping him cold. It was Kim Sol. Having gone through a growth spurt and honed her skills with the school's club, she stood over the bullies like they were nothing. Sol swiftly dealt with the delinquents, defending her little brother without breaking a sweat. Afterward, she turned to Jang Yim and firmly recruited him into her club, starting him on a rigorous training routine. At first, Jang Yim thought she was just bailing him out, but soon he realized this was far from the case. Sol's training was brutal, and every day he endured her intense regimen. Over time, he adapted, making friends and settling into a lively and fulfilling middle school life. A few years later, their eldest sister Jan was accepted into a prestigious nursing school. The whole family was overjoyed and proud of her accomplishment. Jang Yim kept up his training, and by then, he was beginning to show impressive physical progress. Then one day, a life-altering letter arrived in the mail. Reading the government's mandatory military enlistment notice, Jang Yim felt a mix of dread and resignation. His family sent him off with encouragement, his mom tearfully telling him to stay safe, his dad looking proud, and Sol laughing at his new buzz cut. With that, he joined the ranks of other recruits, ready to face the challenges that lay ahead. Jang Yim walked toward the entrance of the military camp, his head held high. He could still hear his family cheering him on, their voices fading as he moved further away. But once he was out of their sight, tears began streaming down his face. He loved his family deeply, their support and affection meant the world to him. As he walked on, his memories blended into dreams, carrying him away until he finally opened his eyes. To his surprise, he found himself lying on a soft futon in an unfamiliar room. Sitting up quickly, he looked around in confusion, his heart pounding as he tried to make sense of his surroundings. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he remembered fainting by the doorway after helping Young-soo reunite with his family, but the memory felt foggy. Instinctively, he reached for an axe from his storage space, just to be safe. He was startled when a calm voice asked, "Did you sleep well?" Turning around, he saw Young-soo's wife and daughter sitting at a nearby table, eating peacefully. They looked at him curiously, their expressions puzzled as he stood there, axe in hand. Jang-yum froze, unsure of what to say or do, still shaken from his intense dream. Glancing around the room, he noticed Young-soo sleeping soundly on a futon nearby. Sensing his awkwardness, Young-soo's wife spoke up with concern, asking if he was all right. She explained that he had collapsed outside and fallen into such a deep sleep that they hadn't wanted to disturb him. Realizing he was safe, Jang-yum felt a pang of guilt for instinctively reaching for his axe like a startled animal. He quietly stowed the weapon back into his private storage and asked how long he'd been out. "Not too long," she replied with a gentle smile. "You were only out for about 3 hours." She then went on to share how Young-soo had already filled her in on everything that had happened. He hadn't stopped talking about how much of a help Jang-yum had been, ensuring he made it home safely. Young-soo's wife expressed her heartfelt gratitude, saying she couldn't imagine what she would have done if her husband hadn't made it back. Her sincere words left Jang-yum feeling a bit awkward, and he tried to brush off the praise, insisting that Young-soo had helped him as well. At that moment, Young-soo stirred, waking up with a warm, relaxed smile. He chimed in, downplaying his own contributions and insisting that compared to all the times Jang-yum had saved his life, he hadn't done much at all. Mrs. Young-soo then invited them both to join her for a meal, mentioning that her husband had insisted on waiting for Jang-yum to wake up before they ate. As they sat together at the table, Jang-yum felt a sense of peace and warmth, grateful for the brief respite in the company of new friends. As soon as he sat down, he was greeted by a steaming bowl of freshly made conger eel stew, glistening invitingly under the light. He hadn't expected to be served such a lavish meal, especially with the world in chaos for days now. Mrs. Young-soo hoped the stew would suit his taste. She wanted to treat her husband's rescuer to something a bit more special, even though ingredients were limited. Jang-yum wasn't exaggerating when he said there couldn't be a more luxurious meal right now. Since Mrs. Young-soo and her daughter had already eaten, she left the room, giving the men space to enjoy their meal. He found it a bit odd that she left so quickly, but the sight of the stew in front of him was too tempting to dwell on it. Jang-yum took a spoonful, making sure to get a little bit of everything. As soon as the flavors hit his tongue, he felt like he was transported to another realm. The taste was divine, like he'd tasted the nectar of the gods. The stew had a complexity that felt both rich and comforting, as if it had been prepared with great care and love. The flavors unfolded in layers. First, the sweet and oily tang of stir-fried kimchi, followed by the clean, savory taste of mackerel and a hint of spice from the kimchi. Despite the bold flavors, it had a warmth that made him feel right at home. The stew was so satisfying that he couldn't help but finish the entire bowl, setting his spoon down with respect. After weeks of eating convenience foods, a homemade meal felt almost life-changing. As he sat there, contemplative, he realized it was the best meal he'd had since being discharged from the military 3 months ago. The taste reminded him of his mother's kimchi stew, bringing a surge of nostalgia. His thoughts were interrupted by Young-soo's question about his travel plans. If he remembered correctly, Jang-yum was supposed to cut through the Gangnam area. Without hesitation, Young-soo offered to drive him there. Jang-yum looked at him in confusion, and Young-soo clarified that he had already discussed it with his wife. When he told her that Jang-yum was on a quest to find his family, she insisted that helping him reach his loved ones was just as important. However, Jang-yum's final destination was further than Gangnam. He planned to go all the way to Uijeongbu, which would mean needing the vehicle for much longer. Young-soo, anticipating this, laid out his terms but suggested they continue the conversation outside as the sun began to set, casting a beautiful glow across the sky. Outside, under the evening light, Young-soo explained the plan. He would drive Jang-yum to Gangnam, and afterward, he would return to his family using an electric bicycle. That was the only condition. He wanted to keep the bike for personal use. Although he felt a bit awkward asking for it, he was eager to help if it meant ensuring Jang-yum reached his family safely. Jang-yum considered the proposal. It was straightforward enough, But he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Why would a man who had just been reunited with his family agree to such a risky mission? True, Yongsu's impressive driving skills meant he could probably outmaneuver most threats, but even with his talent, he would still be putting himself in considerable danger. As Jang Yum and Yongsu stood outside, Yongsu finally had a moment to breathe, his family safe and sound, food and supplies packed in the cargo hold. To any observer, Yongsu had won. He had his family, resources, and security. So why would he risk all of this for a stranger? Jang Yum couldn't help but ask, curious about what drove this family man to stick his neck out. Yongsu's answer was simple. Jang Yum had saved him, helping him survive the tunnel and make it back to his loved ones. It was only fair that he returned the favor. He even turned the question back on Jang Yum, asking why he had helped him in the first place. The young man struggled to find an answer. He had acted out of instinct, perhaps out of the goodness of his heart. But Yongsu knew he wouldn't have survived this far without Jang Yum's help. The young man's presence had been the difference between life and death. They were, in essence, in the same boat. Sure, Jang Yum had an extraordinary ability, but the journey was still treacherous, the world in ruins. Even with his powers, Jang Yum was just another survivor, clinging to the hope that his family was safe. In a situation like this, wouldn't it be better if they just helped each other? Yongsu admitted that while he didn't have much to offer beyond his driving skills, he wanted to be there for Jang Yum, just as the young man had been there for him. And if things took a turn for the worse, he assured Jang Yum he would protect his own family without hesitation. Jang Yum's mind drifted to memories of the tunnel filled with wyverns, where he had pushed forward for the sake of the people relying on him. He could have taken the easy way out when he saw an abandoned car with keys in the ignition, but he chose to pedal on, determined to save others. Reflecting on that moment made him smile. He didn't regret taking the harder path. After listening to Yongsu's proposal, Jang Yum thought carefully before responding. He explained his subspace ability, a realm where nothing could enter without his permission and where items could be duplicated endlessly. Yongsu already knew some of this, but Jang Yum laid out his condition. They would have to travel through Gangnam, Ujirodong, and finally reach Uijeongbu. He needed Yongsu to drive him all the way until he found his family. But that wasn't all. Jang Yum's subspace could now accommodate more people after he leveled it up, thanks to the mana crystals he had gathered by wiping out the monster hounds in the city. If Yongsu was willing to help him find his family, then Jang Yum would make sure Yongsu's family was protected too. He opened his subspace and invited Yongsu's family inside, assuring him that if Yongsu was joining him, his entire family should come along. Yongsu was stunned by the young man's abilities, especially this new upgrade. With a smile, he removed his aviator glasses and agreed to bring his wife and daughter on this dangerous road trip across the country. Jang Yum, now with 116 mana stones, spent 100 to upgrade his subspace to level 2, leaving him with 16 stones in reserve. As the system booted up and processed the upgrade, Jang Yum watched as his subspace transformed. The maintenance cost increased from 1 mana stone per day to 6, but in return, he gained the ability to accommodate up to 20 people. Additionally, he could now store items directly in front of him, an invaluable enhancement. With the upgrade complete, Jang Yum gestured for Yongsu and his family to enter the subspace. The system notified him of their presence, and upon granting them access, they stepped through the portal. In a blink, they were transported from the broken-down building into an entirely different space, safe and secure within Jang Yum's extraordinary dimension. Yongsu's wife and daughter were captivated by the sheer scale of Jang Yum's subspace. The familiar sight of shelves stacked with supplies seemed endless, stretching in every direction. Even Yongsu, who had already seen the pack fulfillment center before, was left speechless by the enormity of this space. Jang Yum, noticing their amazement, called out for Pax, the artificial intelligence managing the subspace. He introduced Pax to the family, explaining that the AI could help them access anything they needed during their stay. From fresh food to essential supplies, Pax could check inventory and handle delivery if required. He assured them that they didn't need to be sparing with resources. Everything here was endless, capable of being duplicated infinitely. Yongsu's wife, aware of how precious fresh ingredients had become in the apocalyptic world, was hesitant at first. But Jang Yum encouraged her not to hold back. This subspace was a sanctuary where scarcity didn't exist. For now, he suggested they take a break and relax for about 30 minutes while he looked into his new abilities. The warm welcome helped the family relax, and they quickly adjusted to their unexpected new life in this surreal haven. Yongsu took the opportunity to play with his daughter, indulging her in a game of princess, something he hadn't been able to do in a long time. The moments of laughter and relief helped them forget the dangers lurking outside, even if just for a short while. With his guest settled, Jang Yum turned his attention back to exploring the abilities unlocked with the level 2 upgrade. He now had access to something called the Subspace Lab, a laboratory he could activate for 50 mana stones. This lab would allow him to combine, classify, and transform items stored within the subspace, opening the door to creating unique hybrid objects. Jang Yum chuckled to himself, imagining all the wild combinations he could make, like an axe refrigerator hybrid for extra durability and force. The possibilities seemed endless, but he knew setting up the lab would be costly and would have to wait until he gathered enough mana stones. He also reflected on how his subspace ability had evolved far beyond its original intent. Initially, his power was meant to be a one-time storage space, allowing him to store and retrieve a single item whenever he wanted. The space was sealed off from everything else, and nothing could enter or exit unless he explicitly permitted it. But the real twist came when he somehow managed to place the entire logistics center within his subspace. This caused Pax's AI to merge with his awakening system, transforming his ability from a simple storage space to a multifunctional arsenal. Now, he could not only store and retrieve items but also launch them at high speeds, thanks to the shipment function. The subspace ability alone was impressive enough, but with Pax's enhancements, it became extraordinary. Upgrading to level 2 added even more options. He now had an additional storage slot, meaning he could bring something else into his subspace besides the PAX fulfillment center. He could also set up the lab to experiment with combining and altering items, a feature that fascinated him but required a significant investment of mana stones. As he stood there, Jang Yum felt a mix of gratitude and excitement. His ability had grown far beyond what he'd imagined, and he was eager to see what other possibilities lay ahead. For now, though, the lab would have to wait. It became clear that leveling up Jang Yum's abilities was making him incredibly powerful, almost too powerful. His curiosity pushed him to test his subspace limits, and after storing Pax FC, he wondered if he could store anything, perhaps even the entire Earth. Half-jokingly, he gave the command to store the planet, and while he knew it wouldn't work, he felt compelled to try. After a tense silence, the system confirmed it was out of range. Disappointed but unsurprised, he let it go. Just then, Yongsoo approached, ready to discuss the best route to Gangnam. He suggested they stick to the main road, which would be the fastest way. Jang Yum, expecting a few more minutes of rest, glanced over at Yongsoo's daughter, who was already fast asleep surrounded by toys. She looked peaceful and safe within the subspace, and Jang Yum was reminded of why he'd gone to such lengths to protect these people. Thanking him sincerely, Yongsoo expressed his gratitude once again, making it clear he felt indebted to Jang Yum. But Jang Yum shrugged it off, saying they were just helping each other survive in these difficult times. Despite his humility, Yongsoo's respect for him only grew, and he became even more determined to repay him however he could. Back in the truck, Jang Yum felt a hint of nervousness as he glanced at his friend, who seemed a bit too eager to show off his driving skills. Yongsoo, ever the speed enthusiast, gave a confident grin, fully intending to speed through the journey. Jang Yum politely asked if they could take it slow, but Yongsoo was already revving the engine, ready to give his passenger a taste of real speed. As they sped down the empty roads, Jang Yum held on tightly, trying not to let his growing anxiety show. It was a surreal experience, racing through the abandoned world with Yongsoo's family safe in the subspace. The landscape around them became a blur as the truck hurtled forward, and it didn't take long before they reached the outskirts of the city. After a while on the main road, they had to switch to a less traveled path, one that was far quieter and seemingly free of monsters. It was odd, though. This road was usually busy with traffic, yet now it was eerily empty. Jang Yum mused that perhaps the monsters were drawn to places with more people, leaving these isolated areas mostly untouched. As the truck rumbled down the desolate road, Yongsoo kept a sharp eye on the surroundings, focused on keeping their journey as smooth as possible. For now, at least, it seemed like they were safe from both monsters and other dangers. Jang Yum hadn't realized there was such a secluded road leading to Seoul. The area seemed to be part of a Bronze Age archaeological site, likely preserved from urban development. The rough road made the journey slow, but at least they didn't have to worry about random monsters or shady people showing up. Despite the quiet surroundings, Jang Yum felt drained just sitting next to Yongsoo, whose driving was a little too intense for comfort. Suddenly, a barricade appeared up ahead, blocking their path. They had left the ruined city behind, and this was supposed to be an abandoned route, so seeing man-made barriers complete with spike strips was surprising. It looked like some kind of military installation, meant to stop anyone from going off-road. Jang Yum wondered if the military was still operating around here, or if there was a base nearby. But something about the setup didn't feel right. As he checked the side mirror, Jang Yum noticed an armed vehicle approaching them from behind. However, a closer look revealed that the people in it didn't exactly look like soldiers, they seemed more like a rogue group, perhaps bandits who had been lying in wait, watching the truck. There was no easy way to avoid them. Thinking quickly, Jang Yum suggested opening a small portal under the steering wheel so that Yongsu and his family could retreat into the safety of the subspace, leaving him to handle these newcomers alone. He reasoned that if these people had intended to kill them outright, they would have already opened fire on the truck. So, at the very least, he had a chance to negotiate. Assessing the situation, Jang Yum noted there were 3 armed men, one of whom seemed to be the leader. The man watched the truck, likely hoping the tires would burst on the spike strips. Jang Yum feigned innocence, rolling down the window and asking what was going on. The leader gave him an annoyed look, as if this situation should be obvious, and barked an order for him to get out of the truck and open the cargo hold. Jang Yum played along with the thug's demands and opened the cargo hold, revealing stacks of supply boxes that instantly caught the men's attention. The sheer amount of tuna alone was enough to make their eyes widen with greed. In the apocalyptic world they now lived in, this was a goldmine. They figured he must be some sort of delivery driver, and Jang Yum kept up the act, careful not to betray any hint of his true abilities. The leader of the group, clearly interested in the haul, claimed the truck and everything in it, with an unspoken threat hanging in the air. Jang Yum knew they wouldn't hesitate to gun him down if he resisted. When they asked where he'd gotten all these supplies, Jang Yum thought carefully before answering. He told them he'd picked everything up from a logistics center. Technically, it wasn't a lie, but he also made sure to mention that the only roads to it had already collapsed or been blocked off. If they wanted more, he could arrange it, but they'd have to rely on him for access. The leader eyed him suspiciously, considering his options. When Jang Yum mentioned that the supplies in the truck were just a small fraction of what he had access to, the leader's interest sharpened. But time was running out. One of the thugs glanced at his watch and reminded the captain that they needed to wrap things up quickly. With a quick nod, the captain ordered his men to grab a hood and prepare the truck for transport. Then, without warning, he drove a punch, charged with a strange, dark energy, directly into Jang Yum's stomach. The blow caught him off guard, and he doubled over in pain, his vision fading as he slowly lost consciousness. When he finally came to, he heard the thugs talking to someone in a low, respectful tone, addressing him as Sir. Jang Yum was groggy, his abdomen still aching from the punch, and his vision was blurry. As he blinked to clear his eyes, he realized he was in an office, being dragged in front of a large desk. Behind it sat a burly man, clearly in charge, with a plaque on the desk that read Commander. The South Korean flag was prominently displayed behind him, giving the room a false sense of authority. But something felt off. This man didn't seem like any real military officer. Jang Yum's gaze drifted to the sides of the room, where he saw bloodied corpses of what appeared to be real soldiers. His captors were clearly impersonators, a rogue group that had overpowered actual military personnel and taken over the area. The commander leaned forward, his eyes cold and calculating. He had already heard a bit from his men, but he wanted to hear the story directly from Jang Yum's mouth. His voice was gruff as he demanded more details about the logistics center and the supposed stash of supplies Jang Yum had access to. Jang Yum continued playing, admitting that he got everything he needed from the Gunpo Logistics Center. The boss praised his clever decision, wishing he'd thought to raid a place like that earlier himself. Jang Yum then asked where he was and what was happening. The boss clarified that they were in a military base, though he couldn't recall its exact name. From what Jang Yum observed, they seemed to be at a communications headquarters. The boss, exempt from mandatory service, wasn't concerned with the specifics. However, an odd phenomenon occurred here daily at 6 p.m. It would be simpler for Jang Yum to witness it firsthand. As the clock struck 6, a horrifying scream echoed through the entire base. While the boss and his crew had grown accustomed to these chilling noises, Jang Yum felt disturbed as he glanced out the window. There was something hauntingly familiar about that scream. Outside, enormous wyverns freely soared across the sunset sky, their massive bodies and broad wings nearly blotting out the light. But these wyverns were much larger than the ones Zhang Yum was used to facing. The boss agreed, noting that their sheer size was staggering. He, proud of his own strength, nearly lost his life battling just one of those monstrous beasts. Oddly, his attack seemed to meet an invisible resistance. A soldier's smashed skull against the office wall testified to the military's failed attempts to defeat these monsters with firearms, which proved futile. Without supernatural abilities, ordinary bullets didn't stand a chance. The military had started recruiting outsiders to fight, but the boss, observing the power of the creatures against the military's weakness, took the path any leader would. He claimed control over the base. He didn't wipe out the remaining soldiers entirely and didn't plan to harm Zhang Yum either, as the young man seemed knowledgeable. Food shortages plagued the base despite the abundance of weapons and supplies in communications headquarters, so the boss intended to make use of the logistics center for more resources. He planned for the trip to start the following morning. If Zhang Yum could pull this off, the boss promised to welcome him into their fold, providing protection from monsters like the wyvern outside. However, Zhang Yum had already tuned out the boss's talk, thinking instead of what he could fit inside his subspace. This place seemed like a perfect addition. Speaking to Pax, Zhang Yum requested that the communications headquarters be stored in the subspace. The boss, confused, threatened to kill him, but before he could finish, his office had already disappeared. In an instant, the entire base vanished as if it never existed, leaving only the office chair in what felt like a surreal dream. By the time the boss grasped what had happened, it was too late. Kim had already stepped through his portal, leaving the boss alone with nothing but his chair in the middle of a barren wasteland. At least Kim left him a place to sit. Around him, the boss and his crew stood frozen, clutching their rifles, eyes turned to the empty sky as they tried to process the fact that the entire building they were just in had vanished. The boss himself slumped in his seat, his eyes darting side to side, his face a mix of fear and bewilderment. He could only wonder, where did the entire structure disappear to? Meanwhile, Kim spat on the ground, noticing a slight tinge of blood. The boss's punch must have done more internal damage than he'd realized. He felt himself growing lightheaded, teetering on the edge of passing out. That military base had drained his energy in a way he hadn't felt before, as if every last bit of his strength had been sapped. Kim thought that, had he known it would take such a toll, he might have waited, played it safe, even ducked into his subspace first. But it was too late for second-guessing. He'd made his choice and now had to face the consequences. Right now, his only goal was to reach his subspace to recover. As Kim faded into the shadows, the crew around the boss suddenly froze as the sky turned blood-red, filling the air with an ominous darkness. Dozens of shadows, wyverns with wings stretched wide, descended, growling and screeching, ready to attack anything they saw. The boss's gang panicked, scattering in all directions and forgetting Kim completely as they ran for their lives. Even the guard who had restrained Kim bolted, leaving him free to collapse to the ground. Furious, the boss began shouting at his men, trying to rally them, insisting that their guns could still bring down the smaller wyverns. Determined, he vowed to take on the big one himself. But his men ignored him, too consumed by fear as they ran. Enraged, the boss cursed, calling them traitors, until the ground shook. A massive presence landed behind him, sending tremors through the earth. Turning around slowly, the boss's face twisted in terror. A gigantic wyvern, unlike any other, stood over him. Towering at 20 feet with jet-black scales that glimmered under the red sky, its piercing yellow eyes were locked on him. This creature was 20 times the size of the others, a true monster in the flesh. Amidst the chaos, Kim slipped into his subspace, carrying an injured soldier with him. The system prompted Kim to confirm if he'd allow the outsider entry, and with a weary nod, he accepted, bringing them both inside. Kim felt the weight of exhaustion crushing him even more, realizing he was moments from blacking out. His mind raced, understanding he'd barely managed to slip himself and the soldier inside. Next time, he'd have to be cautious. Handling anything large, especially in a critical moment, could be risky. The massive black wyvern loomed behind Kim, its intense stare focused directly on him, sending chills down his spine. He wondered, why is this thing watching me? Meanwhile, the boss, exuding overconfidence, stood tall in front of the wyvern, muttering about his new physical enhancement and how he could crush boulders with a single strike. Without hesitation, he threw a punch at the beast, but to the colossal wyvern, it felt like little more than the touch of a mosquito. The wyvern doesn't even flinch. Then, a sudden, horrifying crunch echoes through the air. Kim, dreading what he's about to see, slowly turns around, his eyes widening in shock. With one brutal bite, the wyvern snaps its jaws around the boss, swallowing him whole. Just like that, the boss is gone in a single gulp. At that moment, Young-soo rushes over to Kim, checking if he's okay. Kim reassures him, though he's visibly exhausted, his energy nearly depleted. Yet, he managed to bring an injured officer back with him, though the man doesn't look well. Kim and Young-soo carefully set the officer down on a bed, relieved to see he only has minor cuts but looks severely underfed. Kim recalls the boss's rants about seizing the military base while running low on food. It's clear the officer had been suffering from a severe lack of nourishment for weeks. Young-soo then mentioned something unusual happening in Kim's subspace. A massive structure had appeared, not just any building, but what looked like an entire city. Young-soo guides Kim to a viewpoint where he can see it for himself, and Kim's jaw drops. He thought he'd only stored the military base building, but he'd inadvertently taken the entire base city into his subspace. His mind reels, he hadn't grasped the extent of his power. When he'd commanded the system to store the military base, he hadn't specified a single structure, so the system interpreted it as the whole city. Young-soo is equally stunned, standing with his mouth open as he tries to process this surreal reality. Kim tells him he'll need to explore the military base thoroughly. Meanwhile, Young-soo agrees to keep an eye on the officer and let Kim know when he wakes up. Setting off to investigate his new domain, Kim hops into his Mercedes and starts driving through the city-sized base, his mind racing with possibilities. Weapons, ammo, explosives, gas masks, military vehicles, even tanks. It feels like he's stumbled on the ultimate cache for surviving the apocalypse. But there's a catch. Unlike the logistics center, where PAX manages everything and can send items directly, this sprawling military city requires a hands-on approach. If Kim needs something, he'll have to locate it himself. He realizes he'll need to map out the entire place, guessing that weapons would be in the armory, with ammo and explosives in storage bunkers. Each item will require a journey across the base. As he drives, he's struck by the sheer size of the area. Kim realizes the monumental task before him, mapping every part of this vast base. He feels like a fool for not realizing sooner. Had he known the base was this massive, he would have stored all the weapons, tanks, and ammo directly into his subspace from the start. Now, he's hatching a new plan. Once he's mapped out everything, he'll send Young-soo to retrieve the ammo and weapons while he stands ready to defend from within his portal. A sudden realization hits Kim. This military base isn't infinite. Unlike his logistics center, which has endless supplies, the resources here could actually run out. No more unlimited bullets or grenades to waste without a second thought. He's still working through the logistics when Pax, his AI, appears casually and tells Kim he's mistaken. This base isn't like an ordinary storage unit. It's been synced with the logistics system, thanks to Pax. Now, the entire base functions within his subspace, exactly like the logistics center. Kim is dumbfounded as Pax continues explaining that with the military base merged into the subspace, Kim can now command it as he would the logistics center. In essence, he could call up any military gear, vehicle, ammunition, whatever he needs, right at his side. Kim stares in disbelief as Pax confirms that once fully synchronized, he'll have limitless access to the military supplies, just like his logistics center. It's a complete game changer. His mind races with possibilities, his face alight with amazement. He asks Pax to double-check, are they talking about endless rifles, ammo, grenades, everything? Pax nods, and Kim's world flips. This is revolutionary. Brimming with excitement, he wants details and asks how long the sync will take. Pax admits it's a massive job, only 0.81% done so far, so there's no clear timeline. But Pax suggests a workaround. If Kim prioritizes specific items, Pax could make them immediately available. Kim doesn't hesitate and lists his essentials: rifles, ammo, grenades, vehicles, and fuel. These are his survival lifelines. Smirking, he knows that with these tools at his disposal, he's ready to face anything. Pax estimates 10 minutes to sync these essentials, after which unlimited access to all weapons, vehicles, and supplies will be his. Feeling a surge of power, Kim asks Pax if there's a security lock, a way to keep the military base inaccessible without his permission. Pax confirms with a simple yes, and Kim instructs him to secure everything right away. He considers the matter briefly, not that he doubts young Soo and his family, but he's uncertain about the soldier. With his portal before him, he realizes he now holds the power of food, vehicles, and weapons in his hands. He just hopes the situation outside isn't as chaotic as he suspects. But the reality is brutal. Wyverns are rampaging, and the boss's gang is being torn apart. Kim realizes the outside chaos isn't likely to subside soon. Back inside, Kim and young Soo gear up for battle. Young Soo, wearing his old boss uniform, looks ready to fight, while Kim locks and loads his M416 rifle. Before them lies a massive crate packed with endless rounds of ammo. Young Soo, with a touch of nostalgia, comments that it's been years since he held a gun and never imagined he'd be back in action like this. Kim reassures him, showing him crates packed with thousands of rounds, with each box containing 10,000 bullets, guaranteeing they won't run out of firepower. Kim then gives young Soo a friendly challenge, asking if he still remembers how to shoot. With a smirk, young Soo grabs his own M416, replying that he's about to show Kim his sharpshooting skills from back in the day. He takes aim, exhales, and then, bang, every shot lands perfectly, wyverns falling one by one, each bullet hitting its mark. In just half an hour, young Soo's rifle is glowing red-hot, the air thick with smoke. When the dust settles, the ground is strewn with wyvern bodies. Still buzzing with adrenaline, young Soo comments that he hasn't had this much fun in years, thinking they've taken out all the wyverns. But Kim remains tense, sensing something amiss. He warns young Soo, saying not all the wyverns are gone. Confused, young Soo looks around at the fallen creatures, but Kim mentions the massive black-scaled wyvern he'd noticed earlier. Young Soo is skeptical, but as the scene shifts, we see exactly what Kim meant. Concealed in the shadows near Kim's portal, the black dragon waits, silent yet menacing. It's like the wyvern knows Kim and his team are hiding inside, waiting with eerie patience for the moment they step out so it can strike. Young Soo, peeking cautiously outside, is puzzled. No matter how hard he looks, he doesn't see anything. For a brief moment, he wonders if Kim's concerns are overblown. But Kim suggests that the massive dragons might be lying in wait, hidden and ready to pounce the moment they emerge. From what he observed, the giant wyvern seemed unsettlingly smart. Young Soo agrees, recognizing that in this post-apocalyptic world, caution is essential. Then, young Soo comes up with an idea. What if they use a remote-controlled car as bait? Would the creature be drawn to a small moving target? They decide to try it out. The scene shifts, and we see them holding remote-controlled cars, each rigged with a small humanoid doll on top. After a quick countdown, they send the cars forward. The dolls zoom out of the portal, mimicking the movement of humans stepping into the danger zone. Within seconds, a massive wyvern swoops down, impaling the doll with its deadly claws and shredding it to bits. Young Soo's jaw drops in horror. The wyvern had indeed been waiting, its gleaming teeth as large as young Soo himself. His eyes widen as he watches the beast tear the doll apart. Then, its fiery eyes lock onto the portal, and with a roar, it lunges forward, attempting to force its way inside. Kim's heart races. He yells at young Soo to start shooting, and both of them open fire, unloading every round they have into the monster. For 15 relentless minutes, they keep shooting, the room filling with thick smoke from the barrage. They think, hope, that maybe, just maybe, they've taken it down. As the smoke clears, Kim and young Soo watch in horror as the wyvern's glowing eyes remain fixed on them, undeterred and now drooling as it inches closer, trying to devour the portal itself. They stagger back, the monster's massive teeth just inches from them. Young Soo stares in disbelief. How is this beast still standing after withstanding so much firepower? Kim remembers the boss's mention of a wyvern that shrugged off all of the military's weapons, forcing the soldiers to retreat. It hits him, this must be the same one, but this isn't just brute resilience. It's as if the wyvern's hide has some kind of awakened ability, shielding it from their attacks. Desperate, Kim grabs a couple of grenades and hurls them directly at the wyvern's mouth with a grin. Let's see if that hides tougher than a grenade. The grenades explode with a deafening bang, the portal filling with smoke yet again. But Kim and Young-soo don't let up, lobbing grenade after grenade, each blast followed by the wyvern's furious shrieks. Time blurs as they fight on, their shoulders aching from the relentless assault. After nearly an hour, Young-soo groans, not having imagined that throwing grenades could be so exhausting. Kim feels like his shoulder is on the verge of dislocating, yet the wyvern sits there, calm as ever, waiting for its chance to strike. Finally, with what almost seems like a bored snort, the wyvern claws at the portal in frustration. Luckily, the portal's unique properties keep it from breaking through. With a glare that could freeze the blood, the wyvern turns and flies off, seemingly tired of waiting. Baffled, Young-soo wonders aloud why it left. Kim guesses that, after hours of failed attempts to breach the portal, it grew impatient and decided to search for easier prey. They wait an extra hour, just to be safe, before finally emerging from the portal. Exhausted but resolute, they pick up their supplies and hit the road again. As they walk, Young-soo, still shaken, mumbles about the horror of the wyvern's sheer resilience. Kim shares his concern. If grenades barely faze that beast, what kind of firepower would it take to bring it down? He realizes that regular explosives are designed for human-sized threats, not dragon-like creatures with near-impenetrable scales. He considers pulling out heavy artillery from his subspace, rocket launchers, missiles, maybe even a bomb. But the thought of unleashing that level of destruction, especially in areas with innocent lives nearby, weighs on him heavily. He won't go down that path. Unleashing such devastation would make him feel like a monster himself, and he's determined to keep his humanity intact, no matter how vicious the threats around him become. Kim stands there, frustrated beyond belief, racking his brain for a weapon that can pack the punch of a bomb without the massive collateral damage. His thoughts spiral. Maybe if he could drop something incredibly heavy from above, it might do the trick. But using something like a military tank? The wyvern would dodge it easily. He needs something small, heavy, and lethal. But nothing like that exists, yet. Out of options, he glances at his magic crystals, thinking he might have a few stones left. To his shock, he finds he has 314 magic stones, way more than he expected. He remembers the dozens of wyverns he'd killed, realizing they must yield more magic stones than the usual goblins and orcs. With this many stones, he seizes an opportunity and pours 100 stones into his subspace, boosting his shipping range to 50 meters and doubling his item summoning speed to 4 per second. Still with 189 stones left, Kim remembers an ability he'd unlocked earlier but never tried, his pocket dimension lab. His curiosity piqued, he pours 50 stones into unlocking it. Inside, he finds an endless white space where he can combine or separate items however he likes. A flash of excitement crosses his face. This might be the game changer he's been looking for. Could he, for example, create a continuous ammo feed by merging a rifle and its magazine? Pax confirms this is totally possible. Kim's mind races, thinking of ways to push this ability further. What if he could arm a grenade in storage, so the second it arrives in his hand, it's ready to explode? Pax confirms, so Kim goes ahead, spending 15 stones to create a new prepped grenade item. But even with this powerful tool, he knows it won't be enough to deal with the massive wyvern lurking outside. Meanwhile, Young-soo drives on, hitting a dead end, a towering wall of abandoned cars piled like a fortress across the road. As he wonders who could have blocked the road like this, Kim appears from the portal. When Young-soo explains the situation, Kim just smirks, confident in his new weapon. With a nod, Kim steps up and starts hurling massive 20 kilograms metal plates like bullets. The plates fly at 150 kilometers per hour, smashing through the car wall with explosive force. Young-soo watches in awe, amazed at Kim's creation, a 500 kilograms barrage that obliterates anything in its path. They press forward, finally clearing the blockade. Nearby, a group of survivors are stationed on a rooftop, armed with little more than household tools. One of them, bewildered, stares at the decimated wall, wondering how it fell so fast. Another, clutching a baseball bat, spots the jeep tearing down the road, kicking up clouds of smoke. They watch, uncertain if they're facing friend or foe. Slowly, the jeep pulls up, and the tinted window rolls down to reveal Kim's warm smile. He leans out and asks the guards if a nurse Kim Ji is here. The men are too stunned to reply, trying to figure out if he's a soldier, a mercenary, or just some unstoppable force. The scene shifts into a flashback. Kim's older sister, the middle child, lands a flying kick that nearly knocks him out. As he tries to recover, he watches his eldest sister, Ji, bent over her books, studying intensely. She's been acting strange, shutting everyone out, prepping hard for an exam. His sister asks Ji if she's feeling okay, her sudden dedication to studying so unlike her usual self. Kim jokes that they might need to call their mom, something's clearly wrong. Exasperated, Ji yells at them both to let her study in peace. Kim and his younger sister had dragged their mom over to Ji, both their eyes wide with worry, convinced their big sis had lost it. Their mom looked at Ji, worried too. For a moment, Ji felt frustrated and small, wondering if her family really thought she couldn't accomplish anything. In a surge of pride, Ji revealed her secret. She held up a thick doctor's book and declared her dream with fierce determination. I'm going to become a doctor. Even if the world ends tomorrow, today I'll still treat the sick. Her face glowed with pride, her eyes sparkling, as she spoke. Her family fell silent, staring at her, completely taken aback. Kim and his sister leaned over to their mom, whispering that maybe Ji really did need a checkup. The house exploded into a loud, lively family brawl, full of laughter, teasing, and disbelief. Days turned into months, but Ji's dream didn't fade. Instead, her grades skyrocketed, and before anyone knew it, she was accepted into one of the top nursing programs. Her family was left speechless. Ji, the girl who couldn't sit still for 30 minutes, had defied everyone's expectations. Now, back in the present, Ji stands in utter shock, staring at Kim, who's finally found her. Her hands shake, her face frozen, and then suddenly, she breaks down in tears. Kim's eyes well up too as he reaches for her, overwhelmed with relief and emotion. They embrace, both crying, holding each other as if letting go would make everything disappear. From behind, young Soo watches with a warm smile, whispering, "Thank God Kim's sister is safe." When they finally break the hug, Kim turns to introduce young Soo, explaining that without him, he might not have made it this far. Young Soo bows respectfully, and Ji, grateful beyond words, thanks him for protecting her little brother. Ji, her expression softening, reaches into her pocket with a small, mischievous grin. She pulls out a chocolate bar, saying she thought he might need something sweet. But Kim laughs and stops her, saying, "I've got enough chocolate to last me a lifetime." Then, his face turns serious as he explains that he has a patient in critical condition. Immediately, Ji's expression shifts, and she insists they bring him to her. Kim hesitates, explaining that the patient is actually in his subspace. Ji's jaw drops, she had no idea Kim had awakened with an ability. He explains that his subspace allows him to access a hidden area only he and those he chooses can enter. He suggests they go somewhere private, and Ji agrees, leading them into the hospital. The sight inside is haunting. Patients line the floors, eyes hollow, some clutching makeshift weapons as they huddle together. Kim takes it all in, shaken by the depth of suffering and loss around him. When they reach Ji's private chamber, young Soo closes the door, and Kim opens the door to his subspace. Ji gasps in awe, staring at the vast space before her, a seemingly endless city-like area. She's speechless, asking Kim how this is possible. Kim smiles, saying he'll explain later, but for now, they need to get to the patient. Together, they make their way to the room where Kim had kept the injured soldier. Ji rushes to the soldier's side, examining his injuries. Kim watches, anxious. Will he make it? He asks, his voice tight. Ji, focused, asks how long the man has been like this, and Kim explains he doesn't know exactly, but suspects he was tortured. With a somber look, Ji says the man's condition is severe, his chances of survival are slim. Kim and young Soo freeze, their hope faltering. Kim, desperate, asks if there's anything Ji can do. Then, a small smile spreads across Ji's face. She raises her hands, which start to glow with a soft green light. "Normally, it would be difficult," she says, her voice confident, "but I've awakened as a healer. Kim and Young-soo watch in awe as she channels her healing energy, hope rekindling as Ji's hands bathe the soldier in that warm, radiant glow. As Ji places her glowing hands on the soldier's chest, the soft green light spreads across his body. She warns Kim and Young-soo that her healing abilities are still at a low level, so she can't bring him to full recovery, but she can stabilize him. After a few minutes, the soldier's wounds begin to close, and his breathing steadies. Though exhausted, Ji explains that he's no longer in danger, but he'll need food and rest to regain his strength. Kim, touched, remarks, "Sis, even with the world ending, you're still treating patients, just like you said." Caught off guard and a bit embarrassed, Ji laughs nervously, asking why he'd bring that up now. Kim repeats her words from childhood, "Even if the world ends tomorrow, I'll still treat the sick today." Ji blushes, threatening to discipline him like their other sister used to, and they fall back into their playful sibling banter. Once they calm down, Ji turns serious, asking Kim to explain everything. Kim recounts the entire story, his entrapment in the storehouse, the messages he sent, and the way the network system crashed. He explains his subspace ability, meeting Young-soo, and their journey here. But Ji, meanwhile, is devouring her meal like she hasn't eaten in days. Exasperated, Kim asks if she's even listening. She nods enthusiastically, but when he challenges her, she fumbles through a vague summary. Kim sighs, but they laugh together as Young-soo's wife enters and offers Ji more food. Curious, Ji asks how Young-soo and his wife entered Kim's subspace. Kim groans, "I literally just told you the whole story," but he starts explaining again. Then, he shares his future plan. He wants to bring his entire family into his subspace, starting with Ji. Next, he'll go to Area Zero to find their other sister. Hearing this, Ji's expression turns serious. Apologetically, she explains that she can't leave yet, she has patients who depend on her, and people here are struggling with starvation. Kim's face falls, concerned that she's risking her safety. But Ji insists, mentioning a particularly dangerous figure, the head of their department, Jin. She tells Kim that Jin has an ability to control minds and poison people and has taken control of most of the awakened people in the area. To help the others, Ji has been secretly stealing monotones to strengthen her healing ability in hopes of eventually curing the poisoned and mind-controlled people. Kim listens with a darkening expression and then firmly says, "No, you're not staying here." Ji insists the people here have no food or water and that they'll starve without help. But Kim, now more annoyed, asks if she even listened to his story the second time. She sits there, puzzled, as Kim crosses his arms, smirking. He points out that the only leverage Jin has is his control over the food supply. Ji nods, and Kim says confidently, "Then solving this problem is a piece of cake for me." Ji cringes at his enthusiasm, muttering that his middle school hero phase seems to have returned. But before she can finish, Kim opens his subspace, and suddenly, stacks of meat, vegetables, water, and other supplies start tumbling out, filling the room from top to bottom. Ji and everyone else stare in shock at the mountain of food, speechless.
At this point, our boy Kim just discovered the ultimate infinite food glitch. After that, the scene shifts, and we are shown the same pervy doctor who mixed his special juice into the hospital food, fed it to the people in the hospital, and is now controlling their minds. An assistant of the pervy doctor comes running to him and informs him that an issue has occurred. The pervy doctor smirks and confidently says that he knows about Jei's brother arriving with some food in a small car. But the pervy doctor dismisses the matter, saying, "How much food can two people possibly bring in a small military vehicle?" To him, this is nothing. The pervy doctor and his group already have enough food to fill an entire truck. He assures himself that Ji and her brother cannot possibly spoil his plans. With an evil smile, the pervy doctor adds that soon Ji and her brother's food will run out because all the hungry people in the hospital will attack them like mad beasts and snatch their food. He smugly predicts that as soon as their food is gone, all the hospital's desperate people will come begging for food from the pervy doctor. He sneers, saying that Ji and her brother were foolish to be so generous. They should have quietly sat in a corner and eaten their food slowly. Their generosity, he remarks, will now turn their life into hell. Yet, the pervy doctor gleefully admits that Ji and her brother, in their naivety, have made his work easier. Now, everything will unfold on its own without him lifting a finger. But before the pervy doctor could finish his smug declaration, his assistant interrupts, stating that Ji and her brother have a surprising amount of food. The assistant explains that the food they brought is almost double what the pervy doctor's group has. Hearing this, the pervy doctor's eyes go wide in shock. He cannot believe what he just heard. The pervy doctor wonders aloud how it is even possible for Ji and her brother to have food equivalent to 2 trucks worth, especially since Ei's brother came in a small military jeep. How much food can a jeep hold? A thought dawns on the pervy doctor. Ji's brother might be an ability user. He suspects that Ji's brother has a non-combat ability that allows him to reduce the size of objects, perhaps something akin to Doran's small light. The pervy doctor concludes that Ji's brother must have reduced a massive amount of food to a portable size and brought it in his pocket. Realizing this possibility, the pervy doctor gets tense. His smugness fades into worry, and his demeanor turns serious. Trying to regain control, the pervy doctor goes to a corner, turns on his mobile phone, and starts watching a video. The video is of Johnny Bro, where a doctor checks a woman's body and performs a miraculous fix. After watching this bizarre video, the pervy doctor regains his twisted confidence. He takes out his special juice, carefully places it in a small box, and hands it to his assistant. The pervy doctor orders his assistant to mix this juice into Ji's brother's food and feed it to both Ji and her brother. Once consumed, the pervy doctor plans to bring them under his control. But he gives a final order. If Ji and her brother refuse to eat, kill them. The scene shifts, and we now see Kim walking through the hospital. He is moving from person to person, distributing food, but there's something peculiar about him. Kim's eyes dart from face to face with a determined focus. It's as though he's searching for someone. Kim internally reveals to us that Ji has already told him about a particular individual he needs to find. Ji assured him that he would recognize this person immediately upon seeing him. A flashback starts, taking us back 10 minutes earlier. Ji is sitting with Kim, explaining the situation. She tells him that the pervy doctor's one and only advantage is food. The pervy doctor controls the hospital because he controls all the food supplies there. In that food, the pervy doctor mixes his special juice to manipulate people's minds. All the hungry individuals in the hospital are left with no choice but to eat the food, despite knowing it is tainted with the pervy doctor's drug. Ji further explains that the drug causes temporary mind control. People lose their willpower for a short time, but eventually regain their senses. Her plan is simple yet ambitious. Feed the hospital with unlimited food so they no longer rely on the pervy doctor. Once they stop consuming his drug-laden food, Ji plans to neutralize the effects of the pervy doctor's control. However, Kim questions Ji's strategy. He asks if feeding everyone would truly make them peaceful. Could some of them use their awakened abilities to turn on him? Ji dismisses Kim's concerns, explaining that most hospital residents have non-threatening abilities. Ji elaborates, listing absurd abilities. Some people can open cans easily, others can warm their hands to press fabric, and a few can wash clothes like a washing machine or brush their teeth without tools. Kim is stunned at the sheer uselessness of these abilities. He cannot believe these people exist. But Ji warns Kim about one exception. There's a highly dangerous person Kim needs to watch out for. Ji compares this individual to the Hulk, describing him as a powerhouse of strength. His name is Hangu. Ji narrates Hangu's story. After the apocalypse began, Hangu traveled to this hospital, worried about his ailing mother. While trying to secure food from the pervy doctor for his mother, Hangu fell under his control. Since then, Hangu has been an enforcer for the pervy doctor, making him a significant threat. The flashback ends. The scene returns to Kim walking through the hospital. He approaches a dimly lit room, his heart pounding. Suddenly, Kim hears heavy footsteps echoing through the hallway, loud and thunderous. The sound grows closer and closer. Kim freezes, knowing that something or someone powerful is about to appear. Kim looks to his left and notices a huge figure, almost double Kim's size, approaching him. The man's bicep is bigger than Kim's leg. At this moment, a flashback of Ji's words echoes in Kim's mind. Ji had mentioned that she didn't know much about Hanga's ability, but assured Kim that Hanga's massive size made him unmistakable. She also explained how Hanga had single-handedly built a huge car barrier by crushing hundreds of cars with his bare hands. Back in the present, Hanga slowly approaches Kim. His intense presence fills the air as he locks eyes with Kim and says in a deep, commanding voice that he recognizes Kim as Ji's younger brother. Hanga declares that he wants to talk to Kim. On the other hand, Kim, though a bit nervous, maintains his composure and signals Hanga to speak. The two stand in silence for a moment, locked in a tense stare. Suddenly, the scene shifts, and we see that Hanga's eyes are glowing bright red. Without a word, Hanga drags Kim out of the car barrier to an isolated area. Once there, Hanga turns to Kim and coldly informs him that Kim has only two choices. Hanga reveals a small box in his massive hand containing the pervy doctor's special juice. He explains that Kim's first choice is to drink the special juice right here, right now. The second choice, refusal, will result in immediate death. Kim, hearing this, looks annoyed and frustrated. With a smirk, Kim sarcastically remarks that Hanga went through all the trouble of dragging him out here just to say this. Kim mockingly questions whether Hanga brought him to this deserted place because he thought Kim might run away. Kim then boldly declares with a confident smile that he is choosing a third option. He promises to defeat Hanga right there and trap him. Hanga pauses, his face twisting in confusion for a split second, but in the next moment his expression turns into pure rage. In a matter of seconds, Hanga raises his Hulk-like hands and prepares to crush Kim's head. But just as his massive hands are about to grab Kim, Kim disappears. Suddenly, a barrier appears between Kim and Hanga. From behind the barrier, Pax hovers with a small red bowling ball in his hand. Hanga, clearly baffled, struggles to understand where Kim is gone and how the barrier materialized in front of him. At that moment, Pax launches the red bowling ball with incredible force. It speeds through the air and hits Hanga square in the chest with a loud bang. Hanga stumbles back a few steps. From behind the portal, Kim peeks his head out and sarcastically asks Hanga if 90 kilometers per hour was too fast for him. Before Hanga can respond, Kim launches another bowling ball directly at Hanga's feet at the same speed. The impact sends Hanga slightly off balance, causing him to stumble to the ground. Despite being hit twice, Hanga appears unharmed. He looks irritated rather than hurt. With a low growl, Hanga demands to know what kind of ability Kim is using. Before Hanga can regain his balance, a stack of 20 kilograms iron plates falls from above and hits him hard. Hanga, now visibly confused, struggles to understand what is happening. Kim, standing confidently behind his portal, tells Hanga that he won't be able to move for a while because of what's coming next. With a mocking tone, Kim apologizes in advance for the pain. Kim adds with a smirk that the 200 kilograms iron plates he's about to drop might break Hanga's bones. He mockingly advises Hanga to stand still like a good boy. In a dramatic sequence, a 200 kilograms iron plate falls directly in front of Hanga. Within seconds, more iron plates stack on top, reaching 400 kilograms. But Hanga, unstoppable, lets out a loud growl and, with an explosive burst of strength, lifts the entire stack of almost 1,000 kilograms of iron plates. Kim, visibly surprised, watches as Hanga effortlessly lifts the plates into the air. But Kim quickly regains his composure and opens a portal above Hanga's head. All the iron plates Hanga is holding suddenly disappear into the portal. The next moment, a stack of 10,000 kilograms iron plates falls from another portal and surrounds Hanga. The plates form a perfect circle, trapping Hanga in a tower-like structure. It looks like a metal castle built by stacking coins, as children do. Kim, standing confidently, thanks Hanga for standing still. He reveals that the first iron plate was just a distraction. Within seconds, the 10,000 kilograms of iron plates form an impenetrable prison around Hanga, leaving him trapped and powerless. After that, Kim slowly walks away from Hanga, his thoughts racing. Kim thinks to himself that Younga's body is incredibly sturdy and tough. If Younga had been a normal human, he would have been crushed and dead by now. As Kim approaches Ji, she looks tense and worried. She immediately asks Kim about the loud, banging noises she heard outside. Ji's face reflects her anxiety as she questions if Kim encountered Youngu. Kim replies calmly, explaining that he did see Youngu and that Younga had taken him to a secluded corner. Hearing this, Ji's worry deepens, and she begins peppering Kim with questions. But Kim simply points behind her and says, "Look behind you." Ji turns, and her eyes widen in shock. Standing tall in the distance is a huge castle made of iron plates. Ji's confusion spills out as she bombards Kim with questions. What is all this? What happened? Kim, brushing off the details, gives her a short explanation. He tells her that he has trapped Youngu inside that iron structure, at least for now. They don't need to be afraid of Youngu. Hearing this, Ji breathes a sigh of relief. They then start discussing how they've distributed food and water to everyone in the hospital. Now all they have to do is wait for Younga to arrive so they can move forward with their plan. But just as they're talking, a figure approaches from behind. Kim and Ji turn sharply to their right and see Youngu slowly stumbling towards them. His expression is worried, and he's holding his head. His voice is heavy as he complains about the intense pain in his head and body. Ji's eyes narrow in recognition, and she immediately identifies the symptom. She declares that Youngu is suffering from mind control and drug poisoning. She suspects that the pervy doctor's special juice has been injected into Younga's system. Without wasting a moment, Kim and Ji run to Youngu. Kim asks him if he ate anything suspicious, but Younga shakes his head and explains that he hasn't eaten or drunk anything himself. He only distributed food to the hospital patients. That's when Ji notices a small wound on Younga's hand with blood seeping out. Her mind quickly pieces the clues together. Someone must have injected the drug into Younga's body with a needle while pretending to thank him. Ji suspects that this was part of the pervy doctor's manipulative scheme. Kim immediately cuts in, saying that this isn't the time to discuss how it happened. They need to stabilize Youngu immediately. If the poison's effects fully take hold, Youngu will become another mindless servant of the pervy doctor. Kim, visibly worried, decides to take Youngu into his portal. He hopes that within the subspace, he'll be able to figure out a solution before the poison fully consumes Youngu. But just as Youngu steps into the portal, a system notification pops up. The system informs Kim that an unidentified energy attempted to enter the subspace, but was expelled almost instantly. Younga's complaints of pain vanish. His headache disappears, his body feels normal again, and the signs of mind control fade away. Kim stands there, struck, as he realizes what has happened. The subspace has a built-in mechanism that nullifies all external drugs and poison. This realization gives Kim a dangerously clever idea. Kim quickly opens the portal again and teleports Youngu inside. The system once again neutralizes the effects of the poison. Youngu looks confused but relieved as he regains control of his body. He doesn't understand how the mind control disappeared so quickly. On the other hand, Kim, Ji, and Youngu exchange knowing smiles. Kim explains to them that he never expected his subspace to have such an incredible defensive ability. It nullifies all external mental attacks. The scene shifts, and we see Youngu reuniting with his mother. It's an emotional moment as he hugs her tightly, tears streaming down his face. He tells her to eat well and rest. Later, a fully recovered Youngu approaches Kim and apologizes profusely. He explains that while under the drug's influence, he could see and hear everything but couldn't control his body. This realization fills him with shame and embarrassment. Youngu then vows revenge. With a determined expression, he declares that he will personally teach that bastard pervy doctor a lesson. He stomps down the hospital hallway, his heavy footsteps echoing like thunder. Before leaving, Youngu thanks Kim with sincerity, promising that if Kim ever needs his help, he'll come at a moment's notice. Meanwhile, JY turns to Kim and asks if he thinks Hungu will be okay going to face the PVY doctor alone. Kim reassures her, saying that Hungu is increasingly strong. No ordinary monster, let alone the PVY doctor, can harm him. The scene shifts again, and we see the PVY doctor receiving a system notification. The notification informs him that the connection with his minion, Hungu, has been severed. Slowly, the PVY doctor begins to hear Hu's heavy footsteps approaching. The PVY doctor smirks confidently and turns around, convinced that Hungu has come under his mind control. He casually greets Hungu, but his confidence quickly shatters when he sees the rage in Hu's eyes. Before the PVY doctor can say much, Hu's fist connects with his face. With a single punch, Hungu smashes the PVY doctor's head. The doctor collapses to the ground, lifeless. Wow, I can't believe the confidence of that pervy doctor to say, "Spare me," after that. The scene shifts, showing Kim, Y, Sue, and G standing together, deep in thought about how to free all the people in the hospital from the mind control of the pervy doctor. They know waiting for the effects to wear off would take too much time. Kim considers using his subspace ability to nullify the mind control instantly, but he hesitates. Kim doesn't want to reveal his subspace ability to everyone. Meanwhile, an old patient stretches his hands and stands in place, looking astonished. He repeatedly mutters about how he can now move his body freely. Slowly, others in the hospital begin to regain control over their minds. People gather with their loved ones, sharing tearful reunions. An elderly couple embraces and cries, relieved to finally reclaim their freedom from mind control. Kim observes the scene, his face full of surprise. He wonders how the hospital patients are freeing themselves from the pervy doctor's grip. Before Kim can figure it out, a heavy, threatening voice interrupts, thanking Kim. Turning around, Kim sees Hungu approaching with slow, deliberate steps, his body covered in blood. Y's casual smirk, paired with his bloodied appearance, radiates a menacing aura. Kim feels nervous for a moment, wondering if Hungu has lost control again and might attack him. But then, Hungu lowers his head in gratitude and thanks Kim once more. Youngu acknowledges that if not for Kim, he would never have escaped mind control, taken revenge, or seen his mother again. Kim quickly understands what has happened. Hungu must have killed the pervy doctor. With the pervy doctor gone, his mind control over the hospital patients has dissipated. Despite knowing this, Kim remains uneasy. A man as powerful as Hungu, capable of killing normal humans with a single punch, now stands before him. Kim cautiously asks Hungu if he's feeling all right and even apologizes. Kim reminds Hungu that he had hit him several times with heavy bowling balls during their earlier confrontation. Youngu waves it off, saying it was no big deal. His bones are still intact, just a few bruises. Hearing this, Kim feels both relieved and awed. He reflects on how even a huge orc could be killed by a bowling ball traveling at 50 kilometers per hour, but Hungu endured 90 kilometers per hour strikes with only light bruising. It was an incredible feat, whose tone grows serious as he expresses something personal. He admits that he likes Kim and wishes Kim would stay at the hospital. However, Kim explains his mission to reunite his family and move them to a safe place. Kim's priority is his family, and he will leave the hospital soon. Yu nods in understanding, comparing Kim's goal to his own desire to reunite with his mother. Still, he bows his head, apologizing for his selfish request, but wishing Kim a safe reunion with his family. Kim thanks Hungu for his well wishes. Before parting ways, Kim tells Hungu they're heading to Yairo City to find his sister. Kim asks if Hungu knows anything about the city, whose expression turns grim as he warns Kim that reaching Yujiro might be impossible. The scene shifts, showing Kim giving supplies, like survival tools, food, clothes, and medicines to Hungu. They share a warm handshake, vowing to take care of themselves until they meet again. Kim climbs into his military jeep and drives off, while Hungu watches from a distance in his black truck. During the drive, Hu's earlier warning about Yujiro lingers in Kim's mind. Kim reflects on Hu's description of the strange occurrences in the city. A flashback reveals Hungu explaining why he left Old Gyro with his mother. He describes bizarre and terrifying events happening there. A massive wall had begun rising from the ground near Namsen Bridge. Youngus struggled to describe it, but said it resembled a child's tooth emerging from the gum. The wall was thick and growing rapidly, eventually towering as high as a building. Its unnatural growth unnerved Hungu, forcing him to flee with his mother. Kim thinks about the massive wall around Yairo City, realizing that if it's as big as a building, there's no way they can pass it with their jeep. His mind races with ideas. Could he use his ability to break the wall? But as Kim ponders, Yunga drops another surprising piece of information. Yunga mentions that Yujiro City isn't just any place. It's infested with skeleton monsters. Hearing the word skeletons, Kim's eyes widen in surprise. But Hunga continues, clarifying that undead might be a more fitting term. These skeletons are unlike any regular monsters. They come back to life even after being killed. Kim feels a chill as he processes this. Monsters that can't die, and a massive wall. Old Gyro City is shaping up to be a troublesome place. The narrative shifts back to the present. Kim reflects on his youngest sister being in Old Gyro City. But oddly, Kim isn't worried about her safety. Instead, he feels sorry for the monsters. Kim knows his sister's personality. She's so strong and aggressive that even the monsters must be running for their lives. With a massive wall trapping the monsters inside Yujiro City, Kim can't help but feel pity for them. Suddenly, a system notification grabs Kim's attention, informing him that G is calling him from inside the portal. Curious, Kim responds and asks what's wrong. G explains that there's a problem inside the portal. She's visibly annoyed as she complains about a soldier Kim saved earlier, saying his attitude is annoying. The scene shifts, revealing the soldier Kim rescued. He has finally woken up. The soldier bows his head deeply, thanking Kim for saving him. Introducing himself, he says his name is Han Ho, and he's from the 50th Intelligence Communication Battalion. Kim, G, and Youngu also introduce themselves in return. After the introductions, Kim checks on Han Ho's health. Han Ho reassures him, saying that thanks to the treatment, he's feeling fine. However, his face betrays suspicion as he looks around. Han Ho asks where exactly he is, noting that he can see the military building outside, but nothing beyond it. Only the barrier. Kim calmly explains that they are in the lounge of the Pax's Logitech Center. This is part of Kim's ability, a separate dimension where no one can enter without his permission. He further explains that they are currently in Gangnam, heading toward the Hanam Bridge. Han's face grows more confused as he tries to process this information. G steps in, simplifying things for him. She explains that they're in Kim's subspace dimension, which exists inside Gangnam, but remains invisible to outsiders. Only those with Kim's permission can enter. Even after this explanation, Han Ho looks overwhelmed. He then makes a polite request to Kim. He wants to be dropped off in Gangnam to complete an important mission. Han Ho assures Kim that it's not because he doesn't trust him. In fact, Han Ho says he trusts Kim completely, but there's something urgent he needs to do. Kim grows tense at Han Ho's request. He tells Han Ho that it's dangerous outside. Leaving the subspace could put Han Ho's life in serious jeopardy, but Han Ho insists. He admits he can't share too many details, but reveals that his mission is to meet the Joint Chief of Staff. He has critical information to deliver. After hearing this, Kim pauses, thinking deeply. Finally, Kim lets out a sigh, understanding the gravity of the situation. If Han Ho's mission is truly that important, nothing can be done. After this, Kim calls out to Pax, ordering him to bring banana milk and a sandwich. Within moments, Pax appears with the items, handing them to Kim with a serious face. Kim gives the banana milk and sandwich to Han Ho and firmly tells him that Kim will not let him go so easily. He must eat the food and then share all the information he has for the Joint Chief of Staff. Only then will Kim allow Han Ho to leave. Although Han Ho is visibly hungry, he resists eating. It's clear he doesn't want to divulge the information to Kim. Seeing this hesitation, Kim remarks sarcastically that it seems Han Ho doesn't like the taste of bread and banana milk. Without missing a beat, Kim orders Pax to bring pizza, burgers, and all the delicious food available. Soon, the table is laden with a feast. As Han Ho starts eating, his defenses crumble and the truth spills out. He begins recounting the secret information he was trying to withhold. Hanho explains that one day, creatures from another world began appearing all over the globe. Insects, animals, plants, and even geographical features like mountains emerged, wreaking havoc. These otherworldly beings attacked indiscriminately, sparing no one, neither humans nor each other. To combat this crisis, the government started recruiting awakeners, individuals with special abilities who could fight against these monsters. A new Awakener unit was formed, which handled the monsters with efficiency. Hanho's mission was to gather awakened individuals and form a special force. Hanho did exactly that, creating a group of awakened people. However, everything fell apart when a huge black vibranium appeared. Against this monstrous presence, neither tanks nor grenades were effective. Hanho reached out to the surrounding military units for reinforcements, but strangely, there was no response despite successful communication. Left with no other choice, Hanho and his remaining military unit retreated to the nearest city, recruiting additional awakened individuals, including an ugly fatso. After enduring a grueling journey, Hanho's injured unit and the fatso's group arrived at a city housing military buildings. However, upon arrival, they discovered the military units were dead and the area was deserted. In the abandoned military office, Hanho found a document containing the word cope. Hearing this, Kim Ji and Young Soo are immediately alert. In military terms, cope means traitor. Hanho tried to contact the Joint Chief of Staff, but their group was ambushed by the Black Dragon again. To make matters worse, the ugly fatso and his awakened group turned on Hanho's soldiers, killing them one by one and stealing their weapons. Hanho fainted during the chaos, and when he regained consciousness, he found himself in Kim's care. Kim pieces the story together and realizes that someone high up in the government must be blocking communication and siding with traitors. Hanho emphasizes the urgency of informing the Joint Chief about this betrayal. Kim agrees, saying it's critical to expose the traitor in the higher ranks. Since their group is already heading toward Yujiro, Kim promises to drop Hanho off at the military base of the Joint Chief on the way. Grateful, Hanho tries to decline further help, but Kim insists that Hanho sit, eat, and rest. Kim then gets up, opens a portal, and calls Yang Soo, commanding him to start the car. Kim orders a direct route to Yujiro. Kim assures Hanho that he can monitor their journey through the portal and dismount whenever he wants. Meanwhile, Hanho contemplates the Black Dragon that destroyed his unit. He wonders how Kim, who doesn't seem physically imposing, managed to defeat such a dangerous beast. But before Hanho can delve further into his thoughts, a humongous orc appears on the portal's edge. The orc opens its mouth, revealing a disgusting larvae, and glares menacingly at Kim, Yang Soo, and Hanho as if preparing to devour them. The orc lets out an earth-shattering scream, sending a chill through everyone. Hanho, startled, screams loudly that there's a monster ahead. But before Hanho can finish his sentence, Kim launches a 100 kilograms iron stack straight at the orc like a rocket launcher. With a thunderous bang, the orc is sent flying far away, reminiscent of Team Rocket blasting off again. On the other hand, Mr. Han's mouth drops open as he watches in disbelief. The orc, which had decimated almost the entire military unit along with all the guns and grenades, is casually dismissed like an insect. While eating, Mr. Han accidentally drops a chicken leg piece onto the table, his shock unending. In front of his wide eyes, a portal opens from above, and out of it falls a military jeep. Mr. Han tries to process what he's witnessing, struggling to comprehend where this jeep came from and how Kim defeated the orc so effortlessly. Kim turns to Mr. Han, telling him to eat and rest comfortably, reassuring him that they'll reach Yujiro very soon. Kim leaves the portal open so that Mr. Han can monitor the situation outside, and, if he chooses, step out whenever he wants. But Mr. Han remains frozen, his mouth still open. He struggles to understand the abilities he's just seen, launching iron pillars into monsters and summoning military vehicles out of nowhere. He wonders, what kind of F*** get-up ability is this? Did I really see that? The scene shifts and 5 minutes pass. Suddenly, another orc appears, moving toward the jeep. Without hesitation, Kim launches a 100 kilograms iron pillar, striking the orc and sending it flying far away. Slowly, the orc backs away due to the force of the impact, but from behind, 5 or 6 more orcs come charging. Kim fires the same 100 kilograms iron pillar, taking them all out in one hit. Mr. Han, sitting in the back seat of the Jeep, watches in amazement. His initial surprise morphs into sheer disbelief as the orcs drop dead so easily. His jaw drops even further as he gazes out the window to see a portal opening behind the Jeep, sucking in all the magic crystals from the fallen monsters. Mr. Han realizes he wasn't seeing things earlier. This is real. As young Su drives, multiple portals appear behind the Jeep, launching iron pillars at high speed in all directions. Monsters coming from the front, back, left, and right are obliterated. For iron pillars are launched every second, each changing direction mid-flight to target their enemies. Kim not only retrieves the pillars after firing them, but also extracts mana stones from the monsters they kill. Mr. Han, watching this chaotic scene, thinks to himself that this is an overpowered, awesome skill. Suddenly, young Su announces that they've reached Banu Bridge, but the bridge ahead is completely destroyed. Kim turns around, looking a little embarrassed, and tells Mr. Han that he promised they'd reach Yujiro in an hour, but now it seems like it'll take a little longer because of the broken bridge. Mr. Han, startled, reassures Kim that they've already come a long way in such a short time, and he's grateful for Kim's help. Mr. Han decides to rest in Kim's subspace. Inside the subspace, Mr. Han reflects that it took them only an hour to travel from Gangnam to Banu Bridge. Even with broken roads and monster attacks, he realizes that this miraculously short time is thanks to young Su's godlike driving skills and Kim's overwhelming abilities. Together, they've made what would have been an impossible journey seem like a normal day. Meanwhile, young Su is having the time of his life, enjoying the dangerous, messy roads, but Kim is clearly not enjoying himself at all. The scene zooms out, showing young Su's insane driving skills as he takes sharp cuts and maneuvers through impossible paths. Mr. Han, sitting in the back seat, feels nauseous from the wild ride. Overwhelmed by dizziness, he retreats into Kim's subspace, thinking about how talented Kim and young Su are. Finally, they arrive near Ujira City. The city looms just beyond a massive stone fortress. Kim realizes that they can't drive inside using their Jeep. From a distance, Kim assesses the fortress, wondering if he'll be able to break through it with his ability. With the broken Banu Bridge forcing them to take a longer route, they've reached Yongsan City, where Mr. Han was supposed to disembark. Kim and young Su drop Mr. Han off at his destination. Mr. Han thanks them wholeheartedly for their help before parting ways. After saying goodbye, Kim starts thinking about how to breach the fortress. He wonders if he can bring all of Ujira's city into his subspace. If he succeeds, perhaps he'll finally be able to reunite with his sister. But as soon as Kim realizes the situation, he notices something important. He needs 1,000 mana stones to level up his subspace, but he has only 400. However, Kim is shocked to see the 400 mana stones because just an hour ago, he had 0. In only 1 hour, Kim had managed to collect 400 mana stones. Kim thinks to himself that if he continues driving with young Su for just 2 more hours, he will easily gather the 1,000 mana stones he needs. But as Kim is processing this, Mr. Han looks at him from outside the portal and asks seriously if Kim and young Su can join him. Mr. Han explains that the government is providing support, such as mana stones, to help with the initial growth of awakened individuals like Kim and young Su. After hearing this, Kim thanks Mr. Han for the offer, but firmly states that his family comes first. Kim's only mission is to rescue his family, and he can collect mana stones at a faster rate on his own than with any military assistance. Hearing this, Mr. Han pauses, recalling how effortlessly Kim had defeated so many orcs along the way and gathered mana stones. Mr. Han doesn't know what to say to convince Kim to join him. Kim then says something that startles Mr. Han. In a serious and smirking tone, Kim asks, "There must be a helicopter at the military base, right?" Mr. Han, surprised, confirms that the last time he was at the base, there was indeed a helicopter. The scene shifts to the military base, where the director is sitting in his room, deeply worried. He stares at a map, calculating the dire state of the government. He wonders if they can even claim that the government still exists, as nearly all their military units have been destroyed. Communication with other units is non-existent, and their attempts to handle the situation have been chaotic. Even the special unit of awakened soldiers is trapped amidst the monster attacks. The director doesn't know how to free them. As he is pondering this, another military officer enters and informs him that someone from outside wants to meet him. The director asks who it is. The officer explains that it's Mr. Han, commander of the 50th Battalion of the National Communication Agency, who says he has critical information. The director, surprised, immediately allows Mr. Han to enter. Mr. Han salutes the director and begins to explain everything, detailing how his entire unit was destroyed by a black dragon and how he discovered a traitor within the government. Mr. Han provides all the information he has gathered, leaving the director shocked. After hearing about Kim and Young-soo, the director becomes even more intrigued. Mr. Han mentions that Kim and Young-soo are waiting outside and need a helicopter. The director and Mr. Han head downstairs to meet Kim and Young-soo. The director bows his head in gratitude to Kim, thanking him for saving Mr. Han and bringing such crucial information. Kim, in his usual calm demeanor, says it was nothing special. He just did what any decent human being would have done. The director then brings up the matter of the helicopter. He mentions that he heard Kim needs a helicopter and is willing to provide supplies such as food, survival equipment, and medicine in exchange. However, the director explains that helicopters are strategically crucial assets and that it would be difficult to give one in exchange for just food. The director then offers a condition. If Kim and Young-soo join the military as awakened soldiers, the helicopter will be provided. The director explains that the government is struggling to stabilize the situation, and the addition of talented individuals like Kim and Young-soo would make it much easier to handle the crisis. Kim, apologetic but firm, responds that nothing is more important to him right now than rescuing his family. He respectfully declines the offer to join the military. The director, disappointed, explains that without joining the military, it will be impossible to provide a helicopter. Kim replies calmly, saying that he understands the importance of helicopters to the military and has no hard feelings. After saying this, Mr. Kim sits in his jeep, wishing good luck to the military and expressing his hope that the situation outside will stabilize soon so that everyone can return to their normal lives. Until then, Mr. Kim wishes good health and luck to everyone before driving away. On the other hand, as the director sees Mr. Kim leaving, both he and Mr. Han become tense. Their motive to recruit Mr. Kim now seems uncertain. Meanwhile, Mr. Kim, seated in his jeep, begins to consider his options. If the helicopter isn't possible, another solution must be found to reach Yogo City. Just as Mr. Kim starts to leave, the director calls out to him. Mr. Kim lowers the window, his expression serious, as the director offers a deal. If Mr. Kim fulfills a request, the director will arrange a helicopter for him. The scene shifts, showing the devastation of the city. Entire buildings are collapsed, streets are empty, and the remains of vehicles lie scattered as Mr. Kim drives his jeep, sipping juice. He begins recalling a flashback. The director had explained that awakened soldiers with combat abilities had formed an elite combat team and were sent to Ujira City. However, the team is now trapped in a building. Although they are still alive and in communication, they are severely injured and cannot return to base because skeleton monsters are blocking the roads. Hearing the name skeletons, Mr. Kim was surprised. The director elaborated, explaining that although the skeletons are not inherently dangerous, they are extremely hard to kill. Their bones are so durable that even rocket launchers fail to destroy them. Crushing them with tanks doesn't work either, as they revive themselves due to a magical stone in their hearts. Back in the present, Mr. Kim drives towards the building to rescue the trapped soldiers. In the distance, a group of skeletons approaches his jeep, their eyes glowing menacingly. The director had tasked Mr. Kim with eliminating the skeletons and rescuing the soldiers. In return, Kim would receive the promised helicopter, Kim opens 3 portals, and from each portal, 100 kilograms iron pillars emerge, smashing the skeletons one by one like toys. The skeleton bones fly through the air, shattered effortlessly. Sitting in the vehicle behind, the military men are left speechless. They watch as Mr. Kim kills nearly 50 skeletons in a single attack, a feat that had previously seemed impossible. The scene shifts to the building where the awakened soldiers are trapped. Spotting reinforcements arriving, they cheer and shout with relief. Kim quickly rescues the soldiers, who pile into an empty military vehicle. The convoy, now consisting of 3 military trucks, moves forward with Kim leading the charge. Kim recalls another flashback. The director had warned him about a skeleton monster, the Skeleton Knight. Unlike ordinary skeletons, the Skeleton Knight is on a completely different level, wielding a shield and sword. This creature has single-handedly wiped out half the military men sent to Yojiro City. The director emphasized how the Skeleton Knight could cut through a rocket launcher like butter. Despite the warning, Kim continues moving forward. The Skeleton Knight appears in front of Kim's car. The director's instructions had been clear: avoid fighting this monster at all costs. But Kim decides otherwise. Opening a portal, Kim launches a 100 kilograms iron pillar at the Skeleton Knight with tremendous speed. However, the knight unsheathes his sword and, with a single slash, cuts the iron pillar into 2 pieces like butter. Seeing this, all the military men are shocked at how such a huge 100 kilograms iron pillar was sliced by the Skeleton Knight as if it were butter. Even Kim and young Sue are stunned. On the other hand, the Skeleton Knight stands majestically, like a warrior, his gaze unwavering. The Skeleton Knight begins to chant something in a strange language. The eerie sound echoes in the air, but Kim and young Sue can't understand a word of it. Kim feels a growing curiosity mixed with unease. He wonders how this Skeleton Knight, seemingly dead, can speak. Suddenly, the Skeleton Knight raises a shimmering crystal in his bony hand and breaks it while muttering a magic chant. Immediately, Kim, young Sue, and the others begin to understand the Skeleton Knight's speech. The skeleton warrior greets Kim with a deep, echoing voice, introducing himself as Guan, one of the 12 knights serving the Night King. Kim watches, astounded, as Guan explains himself. Kim marvels at how this magic stone allowed the Skeleton Knight to speak the language of Earth. The Skeleton Knight turns to Kim, his bony finger pointing, and says that Kim's greeting, throwing an iron pillar, was quite interesting. He then questions Kim's intentions, demanding to know why Kim has intruded on the Knight's territory. Guan reminds Kim that even during the early pioneer phase, there are rules and business ethics to be followed. Kim is baffled. He has no idea what Guan means by the pioneer phase or what these rules are. Frustration begins to bubble inside him, and in a fit of anger, Kim commands another 500 kilograms iron pillar to be hurled at Guan with incredible speed. But yet again, the Skeleton Knight slices through it like tofu with his sword. Kim smirks, his confidence still intact, and sarcastically remarks that these iron pillars are useless, calling them weak attacks that can't even scratch him. However, before Kim can finish his sentence, another 500 kilograms iron pillar is launched at the Skeleton Knight, sending him falling to the ground. But Guan, unyielding as ever, rises again. He stands tall, unharmed, not a scratch on his bony frame. His flaming eyes burn with rage as he asks Kim, "Is this your answer?" Before he can complete his taunt, another 500 kilograms iron pillar comes hurtling toward him. Guan slices it cleanly once more and begins marching towards Kim. Kim feels a pang of fear as the Skeleton Knight moves closer. Young Sue, watching from the sidelines, enters panic mode and shouts to Kim, "What should we do now? He's coming for us?" Kim's mind races, worried about how Guan could easily cut through 500 kilograms pillars and remain unscathed. But then an idea sparks in Kim's mind. He quickly opens his inventory and uses 50 magic stones to unlock the tracking delivery system. This would allow him to precisely target his items. Kim commands Pax to aim the next iron pillar directly at Guan's chest. With a resounding command, Pax activates the system, and the iron pillar zooms toward Guan at lightning speed. The skeleton knight notices the incoming attack and smirks. He taunts Kim, calling him a foolish mage who thinks iron pillars can harm him. Guan braces himself, ready to cut the pillar once again. But just as Guan raises his sword to strike, the iron pillar suddenly changes direction midair. It smashes directly into Guan's chest with a deafening crash. Guan is sent flying far back, hitting the ground with a heavy thud. Despite the impact, Guan is unharmed. He throws the iron pillar aside like it's nothing and stands up again. Looking at Kim, he snarls, "Don't get cocky. I just let my guard down for a moment." Before Guan can finish a sentence, a yellow bowling ball comes flying at incredible speed and smacks him on the head. Guan barely registers what hit him before another bowling ball slams into his temple. Confused and frustrated, Guan tries to understand what is hitting him, but the attacks don't stop. Another bowling ball zooms in and hits his left eye. The scene shifts to reveal Pax following Kim's precise commands. Kim directs Pax to target Guan in a pattern. First the left side of his head, then the back, then the front, then the crown, and finally his chest. The relentless bombardment of 10 kilograms bowling balls leaves Guan disoriented and furious. Every time Guan tries to dodge, another bowling ball hits him from a random angle. The precise targeting leaves him no chance to counter. Finally, Kim takes a deep breath of relief. On the sidelines, young Soo watches in awe and shock. He can't believe how Kim managed to outsmart the skeleton knight. Young Soo, visibly relieved, turns to Kim and thanks him profusely for saving them once again. But Kim explains that they still need to wait and stay quiet. The skeleton knight hasn't been defeated yet. Kim clarifies that he's only temporarily stopped the skeleton knight. Kim further notes that the armor of the skeleton knight seems far tougher than the giant black wyvern they previously encountered. And with the skeleton knight wielding a shield and a sword, it's honestly more threatening than the wyvern. Meanwhile, the skeleton knight is unable to respond properly and merely tells Kim to stop the attack. Kim wants to talk to him, but before he can say anything, multiple bowling balls from various directions continue to smash into the skeleton knight's head, leaving a small crack in his skull. On the other side, Kim and Young Soo are discussing the evacuation plan. They decide that while the skeleton knight is distracted, they should ensure that all the military personnel are safely removed from the area. However, while talking, Younga notices something unusual. Pieces of the skeleton knight's armor are falling to the ground. Kim notices this as well. At first, Kim believed the armor was indestructible, but seeing those pieces fall sparks a brilliant idea. Kim tells the 500 kilograms iron pillar to attack the skeleton knight in the same spot where the bowling balls were hitting. The bowling balls, being small and high speed, had already weakened the skeleton knight's head by creating a crack. Kim theorizes that if the iron pillar strikes the same weakened spot, it could deal critical damage. As Kim commands the iron pillars to follow the same pattern as the bowling balls, the first iron pillar strikes the skeleton knight's head with a loud bang. The force causes the skeleton knight's body to shatter into pieces. His head flies off, and the skeleton warrior collapses dead. In his final moments, the skeleton knight declares, "You are an impressive mage, Kim, but don't think this is the end. Even in death, we serve the Night King." With that, the skeleton warrior falls silent. As soon as the skeleton warrior dies, 2 huge blue mana stones and a weird red mana stone fall to the ground. Kim immediately summons these items to his subspace. The system notifies Kim that he has obtained 2 large mana stone fragments and a reinforcement stone. Kim is surprised to see the reinforcement stone. Behind him, the military men are speechless. They cannot believe that Kim has defeated the skeleton knight. The soldiers marvel at Kim's abilities, saying that the skeleton warrior, who hadn't even flinched when hit by tank shells, was brought down by this fabled-looking guy. The military men shower Kim with praise, declaring him a hero. The scene shifts, showing Kim entering the director's office. He has successfully freed all the military personnel. When the director hears that Kim has defeated the skeleton warrior, he is left speechless. The director reminds Kim that he had advised him to run away if he ever encountered the skeleton warrior. The director had never imagined that Kim would defeat such a formidable enemy. While the director knew Kim was an extraordinary awakener, he hadn't realized just how high-level Kim truly was. The director expresses his admiration and gratitude, saying that once Kim has reunited with his family and ensured their safety, the director would like Kim to return to the military and assist him further. Kim reflects on the director's high expectations of him. While Kim is grateful for the praise, he knows the battle against the skeleton warrior was a close call. He admits to himself that if there had been even one more enemy like the skeleton knight, he wouldn't have survived. Kim recalls the skeleton warrior's ominous words, referring to himself as one of the 12 knights of the Night King. Kim wonders if there are 11 more knights just as powerful or even stronger, lurking in the wild. As Kim follows the director, he begins to strategize. He realizes that the bowling balls were more effective than the iron pillars due to their small size, heavy weight, and incredible speed. The director interrupts Kim's thoughts, asking if he is heading to Yojiro City. Kim confirms this. The director explains that high walls have risen around Yojiro City, almost reaching the sky. The director reveals that he had sent many units to investigate Yojiro City, but contact was lost. However, aerial inspections have confirmed that people are still active inside the city. The director assures Kim that his sister is alive inside Yojiro City, so Kim shouldn't worry. Kim, thinking about his sister, feels confident that she is fine. In fact, Kim knows that his sister is more of a monster than the actual monsters. The director further explains that the walls around Yojiro City are gradually forming a roof, and that time is limited. Fortunately, the military can land Kim inside the city before it completely closes off. The director brings Kim to the rooftop where a helicopter is waiting. At first glance, the helicopter appears old and run down. But before Kim can say anything, the director points to the left. Kim turns his head and is stunned. In front of him stands a shiny, double-sized Blackhawk helicopter, sleek and menacing. Both Kim and Young-soo are in awe. The moment Young-soo sees the helicopter, his inner Truck-CUN driver instinct kicks in. He smirks evilly and starts laughing excitedly, clearly eager to pilot the helicopter. Kim is also surprised. At the same time, the director begins to explain something, but Young-soo interrupts, laughing loudly. Young-soo turns to the director and says he is touched that the director is lending them a Blackhawk helicopter in such a dire situation. Young-soo is already very excited to fly it. The director laughs and remarks that he was wondering who would fly this Blackhawk, but it seems like Young-soo has experienced flying such a vehicle before. Before the director can finish his thought, Young-soo interrupts, "I've never flown a Blackhawk before." Young-soo then looks at his system notification and explains that while he's never flown a helicopter before, he feels like he'll be able to fly this one. As he inspects the helicopter, a notification appears in his system. It states that if Young-soo uses 50 magic stones, he will be able to register the Blackhawk to his system, and all the knowledge needed to fly the vehicle will be transferred to his mind. Young-gu enthusiastically shares this discovery with everyone. He explains that his ability, Best Driver, lets him handle any vehicle with ease. He can drive or pilot anything flawlessly. Until now, he thought his ability could only handle vehicles he'd driven in the past, but now it seems different. Instead of leveling up his ability, Young-soo realizes he must register each vehicle he wants to pilot into his system. This new understanding excites him. Hearing this, Kim is also amazed, and things begin to make sense. Kim reflects that even though they had killed countless monsters together, Young-soo's ability never seemed to level up. Now it's clear that Young-soo's skill doesn't evolve in a traditional sense. It simply registers new vehicles. The director then surprises them by retrieving a suitcase from the Blackhawk. He opens it to reveal a collection of magic stones. The director places the suitcase in front of Kim and says there are 200 magic stones inside. The director admits he originally intended this as a surprise for their journey, but now offers the stones for Young-soo to register the Blackhawk. Hearing this, both Kim and Young-soo thank the director profusely. Young-soo wastes no time and quickly takes 50 magic stones to begin registering the Blackhawk into his system. Meanwhile, Kim feels a mix of gratitude and pressure at how much the director is giving them. As young Soo completes the registration, he begins receiving a flood of information about flying the Black Hawk. He grows more excited, smiling evilly as if a demon lord had possessed him. Kim watches this transformation, and a chill runs down his spine. Young Soo grins wickedly and tells Kim, "I've got this bad boy figured out." He then urges Kim to quickly board the helicopter, claiming he can't wait to fly it. Kim hesitates, nervous about young Soo's overly excited demeanor. He reluctantly tells young Soo that he trusts his ability, but nervously asks if young Soo can fly slowly. Young Soo, maintaining his evil tone, laughs and says, "Slow? I don't do slow." Moments later, young Soo jumps into the pilot's seat, his excitement uncontainable. Kim, with tears forming in his eyes, takes his seat, knowing he's about to face a wild ride. Young Soo, like a mad scientist, starts pressing buttons and muttering to himself. He turns to Kim and says they still have a bit of time before departure, suggesting Kim mentally prepare. Kim finally accepts his fate and shifts his focus to what lies ahead. Kim knows that after entering the city, he will have to face many more skeleton knights, so he decides to check his inventory and see how many magic stones he has. Kim needs to upgrade his subspace level. Kim starts thinking that if he upgrades his subspace level, there's a chance he might get a new skill. Opening his inventory, Kim uses 2 large mana stones and an enhancement stone. As soon as he uses them, the system notifies Kim that 2 large mana stones and 200 regular mana stones have been converted. Kim now has a total of 1,393 mana stones. Kim is shocked to see so many mana stones in his possession. So Kim uses 1,000 mana stones to upgrade his subspace to level 3. The system then notifies Kim that his subspace will be upgraded in a few minutes. While waiting for the upgrade, Kim decides to check his enhancement stone. The system explains that the enhancement stone is a great item. Unlike regular mana stones, enhancement stones have been imbued with additional properties. Using the awakening system, Kim can consume enhancement stones to bestow specific qualities into an object. The enhancement stone Kim has is imbued with a fire property. Kim gets a spark of inspiration on how to use the enhancement stone, but now the critical question arises. Which item should be upgraded by Kim? The most important thing is that Kim does not know how much his ability will increase by upgrading an item with the enhancement stone. He considers his 2 main weapons for attacking, the bowling ball and the iron pillars. But whenever Kim used the iron pillars, the skeleton warriors would easily cut them. Only the bowling ball proved useful against them. That's why Kim decides to upgrade the bowling ball. As soon as Kim upgrades it, he gets a new item, the fire bowling ball. The bowling ball is surrounded by lava-like flames and has 2 major abilities, penetration and ignite. After that, Pax asks Kim if he wants to register the Ignite bowling ball as a new item. Kim allows him to do so. As soon as Kim gives permission, Pax informs Kim that the time has come for their departure. Kim starts to mentally prepare himself, but before he can settle his nerves, young Soo starts the helicopter. As the Black Hawk lifts off, Kim gets nervous. The director salutes Kim, expressing his hope that Kim will safely reunite with his family. The director also hopes that once Kim finds his family, he will return to the team. Kim gives a thumbs up and says goodbye to the director. At that very moment, the system notifies Kim that his subspace has been upgraded. There are now new unlockable items and additional enhancements ready for Kim. The system reveals that Kim can temporarily increase the shipping size limit for each item using magic stones. Kim begins looking at all his unlockable items one by one, but as soon as he sees his new skills, Kim's mouth falls open in shock, as if he has seen a ghost. On the other hand, the director notices Kim's expression. He wonders why Kim looks so shocked and worried. The director reflects on the 200 mana stones and the Black Hawk helicopter he provided to Kim. He believes that Kim should feel grateful. The director even thinks about how he will remind Kim of this help when Kim eventually returns to the military base. However, the director begins to worry if he might have made a mistake that caused Kim to look so concerned. Meanwhile, Kim is still astounded by his new skills. Kim's first unlockable skill is the Subspace Laboratory. This skill unlocks a transportation function with a slight healing effect. It allows Kim to heal naturally inside the laboratory. But the most significant part is that Kim can now register external objects in his subspace. However, the system notes that a separate registration fee will be consumed based on the value, size, and weight of the object. Kim finds this new ability to be a game changer. The biggest drawback of his subspace ability had always been its limitation to pre-registered targets. So far, Kim could only use the Logitech Center and military base items unlimitedly. But if Kim can now register any external object into his subspace, the potential is enormous. However, the system clarifies that Kim can only register items that fit into the two currently registered categories, Logitech Center and military base. Kim's eyes fall on the Blackhawk helicopter. He wonders if it qualifies under the military base category. To test this, Kim tries to register the helicopter in his subspace. The system informs him that it will require 1,007 magic stones. Kim confirms the registration. The scene shifts to the director as he begins walking back to the military base. He suddenly hears the sound of the helicopter. Turning around, he sees Kim and young Sue coming back. The director becomes nervous, suspecting something might be wrong with the helicopter. But before he can speak or think further, a large portal opens in front of him. A Blackhawk helicopter falls out of the portal. Not only that, another Blackhawk helicopter emerges from a second portal. As the two helicopters land in front of the director, Kim waves at him with a smirk before leaving. On the other hand, the director is left speechless. He does not understand what is going on. The director gave a little old Blackhawk to Kim, and in return, Kim gifted two brand-new Blackhawk helicopters to the director. The director stands there thinking about everything and growing increasingly worried. After that, the scene shifts. Finally, we see that Kim has entered the city. A huge fortress is being built there, slowly closing from above. The fortress is about to close. Then the scene shifts again, and we are shown a scary-looking castle. The entire interior of the castle exudes a dark, evil vibe. Sitting on a huge throne is the Skeleton King. We get a close-up of the Skeleton King as he speaks in a very serious, clicky tone. He says that no matter how much he thinks about it, he can't understand one thing. The Yenti permit level for the Earth dimension is only tier 8 at best. For a higher tier being to come here, they have to lower their tier like the Skeleton King did. To think that a wizard, known for his arrogance, would come here, even accepting a tier reduction, is shocking. And on top of that, to invade the Skeleton King's territory and kill Guan here. The Skeleton King is talking about Kim. We learn that the Skeleton King is from another dimension and that Earth is an 8-tier dimension. To come to Earth, the Skeleton King greatly reduced his power. His purpose, to conquer Earth. The Skeleton King now believes that Kim, who killed Guan, is also a being from another dimension, a wizard who has come to Earth by reducing his power with the same goal, to take over Earth. On the right side of the Skeleton King, a purple flame begins to take the shape of a skull. It starts talking to the Skeleton King. The flame tells the Skeleton King that before Guan's death, Guan attempted to talk to the wizard, but the wizard killed him before he could say anything. This means the wizard is extremely dangerous. The flame advises the Skeleton King that the next time they encounter this wizard, they should kill him immediately without attempting to talk. The Skeleton King contemplates. He concludes that the wizard must be here for one reason, to take over this territory, just like the Skeleton King himself. But there can't be two tigers in one place. If the Skeleton King wants to capture this place, he must kill the wizard. The Skeleton King then mentions that they are nearly finished with something he calls the harvest. Once the harvest is complete, they will strike at the wizard. The flame reveals its name, Lancelot. Lancelot is a knight whose body is somewhere else, and he communicates with the Skeleton King through the flame. Lancelot then informs the Skeleton King that there is an invader heading toward their castle. The Skeleton King assumes it must be those bothersome toys again. He tells Lancelot to ignore them because they are going to die soon anyway. The scene shifts and we see Kim and young Sue enter the city. A bat-like monster appears but is quickly killed by Kim in one shot using his Ignite bowling ball. Kim is very surprised by how powerful the bowling ball is compared to the iron pillar. While Kim is thinking about this, Young-soo calls out to him and says that it will be very difficult to land because there is a skeleton knight fighting a monster below them. Kim looks down and notices another skeleton knight similar to the one he killed before. However, this one is different. Instead of a sword, he wields a pointy spear, the kind used by knights in ancient times. The skeleton knight uses magic, imbuing his spear with immense power. He unleashes a full-force attack at his opponent. We get a glimpse of a human figure. The figure looks feminine, and as soon as Kim sees her, he makes a strange, annoyed, and disgusted face. The human concentrates magic into her hand, and with a single impactful punch, sends the skeleton knight flying. Finally, we get a full look at the human. She indeed looks like a female, and damn, she has a good body. The skeleton knight genuinely falls from a great distance. Young-soo comments that they might have to face both monsters if they land now. Kim gets startled and in shock says that one of them is his older sister. Hearing this, Young-soo is shocked. He asks which one is Kim's older sister. Kim reveals that the monster who threw away the skeleton knight is his older sister. We finally get a full look at Kim's older sister. She stands in a confident pose as the fog gradually fades, and damn, I must say, she has some thick muscles and a heavenly body. Well, guys, everyone has to comment "mommy muscle" in the comment section. Kim's sister, clearly annoyed, says she felt the impact of her fist hitting the skeleton knight. But why won't the skeleton knight die no matter how much she beats the crap out of him? Kim begins narrating the backstory of his sister, Sol, who he refers to as sister number 2. He explains that as a child, Sol stumbled upon a mixed martial arts match on TV. She was instantly captivated by martial arts. Fortunately, she had a good little brother who supported her passion. Whenever Sol watched a martial arts match on TV, Kim would play with her, and Sol would practice all the martial arts moves she learned on Kim. Despite her efforts, Sol was often disappointed because victories against weaker opponents were not what she wanted. Driven by her ambition, Sol went to the playground to find stronger opponents. However, even the neighborhood kids, including those 3 years older than her, were no match for her. Sol beat everyone, boys, girls, it didn't matter. Recognizing Sol's talent, Kim and Sol's father enrolled her in a mixed martial arts school. But this was where Sol faced her first defeat. Her teacher defeated her, but instead of being discouraged, Sol found the pain of losing fun. She had finally found a challenge worth pursuing. Sol's goal became to defeat her teacher, and along the way, she won several jiu-jitsu competitions. By 7th grade, she had no rivals in the junior division. Her passion for training and obsession with exercise led her to relentlessly work toward perfection. However, this obsession soon turned into a severe addiction. Eventually, Sol suffered an injury, tearing the cruciate ligaments in both her legs. Impatient with the recovery process, Sol resumed training too early and accumulated more injuries. She kept getting hurt and started training again before fully recovering. Finally, at the age of 24, Sol made her debut as a professional fighter. She could have debuted much earlier, given her skill level, but her stubbornness and repeated injuries delayed her. Despite the late start, Sol is so powerful at her age that she can easily rank in the top 10 in all of Korea. Hearing this, Young-soo is shocked, but Kim reassures him that he doesn't need to be afraid of Sol. Kim suggests that Young-soo can land the helicopter slowly. However, Young-soo still looks at Sol from a distance and thinks that, as far as he can tell, Sol looks like a monster. Meanwhile, the skeleton knight slowly moves towards Sol with his sword and in a clicky voice, asks why his attacks aren't reaching her. Sol casually responds, "Isn't it obvious? The skeleton's hands are too slow." The skeleton knight rebuts, saying his speed is not inferior to Sol's. He accuses her of using some weird technique that he doesn't understand. Sol laughs and explains, "It's not a technique. It's just martial arts." She says it so casually that it leaves the skeleton knight puzzled. Hearing this, the skeleton knight compliments her. He says that people like Sol are rare, and that if Sol raised her rank soon, she could become the greatest knight. Soul, however, doesn't understand what he's babbling about. Skeleton Knight's rankings? It's all nonsense to her. The Skeleton Knight continues, confessing that he has a big crush on Soul. He admires her strength and tells her that she doesn't need to worry. He promises to talk to the Skeleton King and ensure that Soul is the only one allowed to stay alive in the city. But before the Skeleton Knight can finish his speech, a fire bowling ball comes flying out of nowhere and, with a loud bang, smashes into the Skeleton Knight, shattering his body into pieces. The Skeleton Knight's body scatters around Soul. A moment later, the same fire bowling ball rolls to a stop in front of her. Soul, confused, wonders how this bowling ball destroyed the Skeleton Knight's body when her martial arts couldn't. As she contemplates, two large mana stones and an enhancement stone fall out of the Skeleton Knight's remains. The stones are quickly sucked into a portal that Soul doesn't understand. She sees what looks like a cone-like vice pulling the stones in. At the same time, a helicopter hovers above her and slowly lands. Kim steps out, smirking, and greets her with a playful, "Hello, long time no see." Kim teases. As expected, Soul is still kicking some asses. He calls her sister number 2. Soul stands there bewildered, her mouth wide open. She's shocked to see Kim after all this time. The scene shifts, and we see a table filled with delicious food. Fried rice, pizza, burgers. There's every type of mouth-watering dish imaginable. Ji and Kim sit stunned, watching Soul devour the food like an animal. Ji, unable to contain her curiosity, asks Soul if she's using some special ability to enhance her physical strength. Soul, while taking huge bites of chicken and pizza, responds casually, explaining that Ji is half right and half wrong. Soul's physical abilities were naturally good. It wasn't related to the barrier. Soul explained that the barrier's only purpose was to prevent her from being attacked by the outside world. That's all Soul said casually. But as Soul continued eating vigorously, Ji's patience snapped. "Eat slowly," Ji scolded. She warned Soul that if Soul didn't slow down, the food would get stuck in her throat and she'd end up with indigestion. Kim, watching the exchange, laughed lightly and told Ji that it was pointless to explain to Soul. "Soul has been eating like this since childhood," Kim said with a resigned smile. Amidst this sibling banter, a good, happy, and emotional conversation unfolded between the three of them. Kim, with a genuine smile, told his two sisters that it was a relief that all three of them had awakened survival-related abilities and managed to survive this long. Now, Kim only needed to find their big brother. However, even as she ate, Soul looked at Kim and said, with a hint of disbelief, "All this is fine, but Kim, your ability is like a cheat code. How the hell can you do all of this?" Kim chuckled and replied that it was a long story. He promised to explain everything to Soul slowly, but for now, he urged Soul to eat and rest. Kim showed Soul how to use packs so that she could order whatever she wanted. He also mentioned that young Sue's family was in the subspace and suggested that Soul should go and say hello to them. Soul nodded in agreement, but then asked, "Are we leaving this city right now? Are we really leaving?" Kim stood up from his chair and replied, "Yes, we have to leave immediately. The city's ceiling is closing down at a very fast rate, and I don't know if this fortress will cover the entire city or not." Kim emphasized the urgency, saying that he needed to collect as many mana stones as possible before the ceiling closed completely. As Kim looked up at the sky, his heart sank. The ceiling was already closed. The entire area was shrouded in darkness. Kim didn't waste a second. He climbed aboard his Blackhawk, flew up to the sky, and launched 5 fire bowling balls at the fortress's walls at full speed. But despite the heavy attack, there wasn't even a slight dent in the fort. Seeing this, Kim became worried. He thought to himself, after all that attack, not even a scratch. Kim considered his options. Should I take the entire city into my subspace? He wondered. But he quickly realized that he couldn't take such a massive structure randomly into his subspace. Kim reminded himself that he needed to be very careful. Kim had already used up all his remaining magic stones to increase the radius of his portal so that he could fit the Blackhawk inside the portal size now measured. He thought about the skeletons and monsters in the city. If they existed, he could kill them and collect mana stones. But Kim also realized he didn't know what would happen to the people living in the city if he took the entire structure into his subspace. As Kim pondered these dilemmas, Sol spoke up from behind. Seeing this situation, it looks very troublesome. After that, Sol tells Kim about her encounter with the Skeleton Knight. She explains how, just before his death, the Skeleton Knight said that he would spare Sol's life because he liked her. The knight mentioned that if Sol stayed in the city, her death would be prolonged. Kim asks Sol for more details, but Sol responds, "Before I could learn more, you split the Skeleton Knight into pieces." Sol adds that she still doesn't know how exactly she would have died if she stayed in the city. The Skeleton Knight had only said he would speak to the Skeleton King about sparing her life. After hearing this, Kim realizes that if he wants to escape the city, he must confront the Skeleton King. The real question was how to find the Skeleton King in such a vast city. Kim doesn't have any clues. But before he can figure it out, the Demon King inside Young Su awakens with a deep, evil smile. Young Su declares, "I only need 5 minutes. Within 5 minutes, I'll find the Skeleton King's castle." Kim immediately understands the chaos about to unfold. "Stop screaming, Young Su!" Kim shouts, but it's too late. Young Su is already in his demon form. Young Su does something insane. He flips the helicopter a full 360 degrees and announces, "I'll search every nook and cranny of this city." The helicopter twists and turns like a snake, moving right, left, up, and down, covering every corner of the city. Inside the helicopter, Kim's condition worsens. He grips his seat, dizzy and nauseous, while Sol looks out calmly. The scene shifts to the Skeleton King. Lancelot informs him that Lionheart, who was obliterated by Kim's fire bowling ball, is dead. Lancelot explains that Lionheart's defeat happened in one hit, indicating it was the work of a powerful enemy. The Skeleton King is furious. He shouts that the harvest is right around the corner, and this intruder is interfering with his plans yet again. Filled with rage, the Skeleton King declares that he will personally kill the intruder. He demands Lancelot tell him where the intruder is, but Lancelot calmly informs him that there's no need. The intruder is coming to the Skeleton King's castle. Hearing this, the Skeleton King laughs. From within the castle, the Skeleton King sees Kim's helicopter flying toward him. At first, the Skeleton King is confused, expecting a wizard, but after observing Kim, the Skeleton King remarks in a serious tone, "This doesn't look like a wizard. Instead, it appears to be an undead." "Well, you know it's bad when the undead think you're undead," the Skeleton King thinks. But the Skeleton King doesn't care. Wizard or undead, whoever has ruined his plans won't be left alive. The scene shifts again, and we see a huge door leading to the Skeleton King's room. The interior of the castle is filled with bat monsters stuck to the walls. They are lying in wait to attack any intruders. The huge door opens, and Kim enters the room. He is in bad shape. It looks like a ghost. In a weak voice, Kim says, "I will never ride in a helicopter again." The motion sickness was on another level. But suddenly, from behind, Sol notices something. She comes running at full speed and calls out to Kim. But Kim, still dizzy, opens his eyes to see a huge, fat, six-pack abs bat monster about to bite his neck with its sharp teeth. At the right moment, Sol lifts her thick-ass muscles, and with a single devastating punch, she tears apart the bat monster's body. All of a sudden, due to the attack of the bat monster, Kim's dizziness disappears. He quickly says thanks to his sister, but Sol cringes at the word and tells him to stop saying thanks. However, Sol's attention is suddenly drawn elsewhere. She notices something strange. Sol begins to carefully scan the entire dark chamber, her expression serious. She mutters that there is something more. Kim, confused, tries to understand what Sol means, but he can't see anything. For him, the hallway ahead looks completely empty with no sign of monsters. But then, from the dark hallway, a sea of red, shiny eyes appears. These bat-like eyes begin to glare menacingly at Kim, Young Su, and Sol. Kim's heart races as he realizes the danger. He turns to young Sue, his voice filled with urgency, and tells him to retreat to the subspace. Kim is worried. How could he possibly face so many monsters alone? But then he remembers he isn't alone. Sol, the martial arts fanatic, is with him. Sol's smirking smile grows even wider as she observes the waves of monsters emerging from the darkness. She says with an excited tone that this is how it should be. One monster wasn't enough for her. It would have been boring. As the tension builds, Sol's evil smile deepens. Without hesitation, she charges into the dark hallway at an incredible speed. Kim barely has time to react before Sol leaps into the air. Her movement is flawless, her body lithe and powerful. With a resounding BAM, Sol lands, crushing the head of a bat monster beneath her foot. She enjoys every moment of it, her smirk turning demonic. One by one, Sol slashes, crushes, and tears through the bat monsters with an almost playful fury. Suddenly, a bat monster attacks from behind, sinking its teeth into Sol's neck. But Sol doesn't even flinch. Instead, she grabs the monster by the head, slamming it into the ground with such force that it shatters into pieces. As Sol continues her frenzied slaughter, the ground becomes soaked with blood. She laughs loudly like a madwoman, reveling in the chaos. Meanwhile, the other bat monsters begin to shake in fear, their confidence waning. Kim watches from a distance, struck and concerned. He knows Sol is enjoying the fight, but he also realizes he can't help her directly without risking harm. His mind races for a solution, and then his eyes fall on the subspace laboratory. An idea sparks. Kim retreats to his portal, leaving Sol to handle the monsters. Inside the subspace, Kim starts assembling a strange machine. Meanwhile, Sol continues her destructive rampage, kicking a bat monster with such force that its skull cracks. The machine Kim is building is an electric pest repellent, designed to attract and shock monsters to death. Once activated, it will pull all the bat monsters toward it and kill them instantly. Kim, now sitting comfortably in a reclining chair within his portal, watches as the machine begins its work. Bat monsters are drawn to the device, and one by one, they fall dead as the electric shocks take effect. Sol notices the machine and becomes annoyed. She yells at Kim, "Is this your way of fighting?" "It's boring." Kim responds calmly, saying he just wants to help his sister. But Sol, clearly irritated, scolds Kim, telling him to stop interfering in her fight. She insists on fighting alone. Kim, equally frustrated, yells back, "If you want to fight, fine, but be careful and stop taking unnecessary risks." The brother and sister engage in a heated but healthy argument, even as chaos ensues around them. Meanwhile, outside the dark chamber, Lancelot is having a serious conversation with the Skeleton King. Lancelot informs him that the wizard outside is strained. Lancelot explains that the wizard isn't alone. There's another warrior with him, who is as strong as Lancelot himself. What's more, the wizard is using unlimited items and employing weird, non-mana-based tools. Hearing this, the Skeleton King becomes very annoyed. He growls in frustration, realizing that defeating a wizard was already challenging enough, but now there's another powerful fighter to contend with. The Skeleton King, deep in thought, mutters that he has no other option. Lancelot, however, warns him that summoning additional power might bring the wrath of the Chamber of Commerce upon them. Despite the warning, the Skeleton King says he has no other choice because the wizard is at least 8th rank in Nangtir, the same rank as the Skeleton King. However, while the Skeleton King might be able to defeat the wizard alone, the presence of another 8th rank tier warrior makes the situation far more challenging. The Skeleton King knows he cannot win alone. He must summon Lancelot. With this thought, the Skeleton King extends his hands forward and begins to chant ancient spells. The holographic skull of Lancelot disappears, and in its place, the Skeleton King finds 3 reinforced stones instead of just one. He begins to circle the stones around the projection of Lancelot's skull. Intense mana starts to gather around the projection, signaling the power of the summoning. The scene shifts to the team's subspace. Inside, electric appliances and copper wires are scattered around. The team is busy working on a project. They grab an aluminum rod and wrap it with thick copper wire. With this, they create a new weapon. The baseball bat repellent stick, a semi-rare grade weapon. This weapon is specially made for Soul. Holding it, Soul's face lights up with joy. The bat has an electrified feature, meaning it can do double damage to enemies. Soul spins the weapon around with excitement, testing its strength and enjoying every moment. After leaving the subspace, Soul tells Kim that his ability is a scammer ability. Kim can make any item with ease, and Soul thanks him for creating such a powerful weapon. She remarks that the electric club will be great for battling monsters. However, Soul gives Kim a final warning. This time, Kim must not interfere in her fight. She wants to kill all the bat monsters alone. As soon as Soul steps out of the subspace, she starts scratching her neck. Concerned, Kim asks if Soul is hurt. Soul explains that ever since the bat monster bit her neck, she hasn't felt any pain, but now her neck itches. She mentions receiving a system notification in the subspace, stating that all impure energy has left her body. This makes Kim tense. He wonders if Soul might become a vampire due to the bite. Soul jokingly tells him that if she does turn into a vampire, she wants him to kill her. She adds that she wouldn't want to live as a vampire lady. The two share a brief, humorous moment. Meanwhile, the Skeleton King turns to Kim and threatens him. He sarcastically remarks that the name Arcane must be crying because of Kim's actions. The Skeleton King accuses Kim of ruining his plan and causing a ruckus in his territory. He continues, stating that even if Kim is from the arcane dimension, he has no right to interfere in someone else's domain. The Skeleton King declares that he will now fight and kill Kim. Kim and Soul exchange a glance, baffled by the king's rambling. Kim mutters that this idiot makes no sense. Hearing the word idiot, the Skeleton King becomes furious. With a roar, he calls out to Lancelot, instructing him to kill Kim and Soul immediately. The next moment, Lancelot is finally summoned. His appearance is terrifying. He has 4 glowing eyes and wears heavy silver armor. In his hand, he wields a huge, massive sword. Soul, seeing Lancelot, becomes excited. She was bored of fighting weak monsters and now has a challenge. She turns to Kim and warns him not to interfere in this fight. If you interfere, it won't be right, she says before charging towards Lancelot. Before Soul can fully engage, Lancelot lunges forward and throws his sword at her, aiming to cut her in half. Soul dodges the attack with her electrified magic bat, and the impact of the clash is so powerful that Kim feels it from afar. However, as the fight progresses, Soul notices that Lancelot is slowly cutting her bat in half. Realizing the danger, she quickly retreats. With one powerful slash, Lancelot splits the magic bat into 2 pieces. Soul looks at Kim and jokingly remarks that her bat wasn't weak. It's just that Lancelot is too strong. Despite the loss of her weapon, Soul is undeterred. Finally, we get a full view of Lancelot, and it's clear that he is a threatening and formidable knight. On the other hand, the Skeleton King declares with confidence that he has summoned Lancelot, the strongest knight under his command. Meanwhile, Kim reflects on Soul's words, realizing that it's rare for her to acknowledge an opponent's strength. If Soul has admitted that Lancelot is strong, then Lancelot is truly dangerous and formidable. Looking at Soul, Kim proposes a deal. If Soul manages to kill Lancelot, will she give Kim Lancelot's magic stone? Kim argues that he has used up all his magic stones to craft weapons for Soul, and since Lancelot has destroyed those weapons, it seems fair to repay Kim with a magic stone. However, Soul flatly refuses and declares that whoever kills Lancelot first will claim ownership of the magic stone. With a smirking confidence, she adds that Lancelot can do nothing to stop her. Kim, determined to contribute, activates his Ignite bowling ball and hurls 5 high-speed fiery bowling balls toward Lancelot. But Lancelot stands casually, unfazed, as if swatting away a nuisance. Lancelot draws his sword and, with a single slash, cuts through all the bowling balls as if they were nothing. As the balls split, a hot, lava-like liquid oozes out. Kim doesn't stop there. He throws bowling balls from multiple directions, hoping to overwhelm Lancelot. But Lancelot treats the attacks like child's play, slicing through the incoming balls like tofu. Seeing this, Kim's mouth hangs open in shock. He is stunned by Lancelot's agility and precision. How could someone cut through high-speed magic bowling balls so effortlessly? While Lancelot is occupied cutting the bowling balls, Sol seizes the opportunity and dashes forward. She punches Lancelot's face with all her might, but to her dismay, Lancelot does not take even 1% damage. In retaliation, Lancelot swings his sword, aiming to slash Sol's neck. Sol barely dodges the attack and counters with punches to Lancelot's face and chest, yet Lancelot remains unharmed. Kim sees his chance and launches another Ignite bowling ball directly at Lancelot's head. This time, Lancelot is hit full force and is thrown far away, but even then, Lancelot is unharmed. He stands up, glaring at Kim with threatening eyes, not a single scratch on him. Kim, feeling uneasy, begins to suspect something is terribly wrong. He recalls the same ominous feeling he had when facing the Black Wyvern. His sixth sense tells him that this fight is not what it seems. Without hesitation, Kim activates his subspace and pulls Sol into it. Sol, furiously angry, demands to know why Kim interfered. Kim explains that he felt an unshakable sense of danger. Even after using his strongest attack, Lancelot remained untouched. Kim compares the situation to his past battles. His strongest attack was enough to cut the Skeleton King into 2 pieces in one blow, yet it did nothing to Lancelot. Sol, though reluctant, admits that she cannot defeat Lancelot alone. Lancelot, however, has no intention of waiting. In an insanely fast movement, he disappears from his previous position and appears in front of Kim's barrier, slamming his enormous sword against it. Kim is genuinely terrified by Lancelot's blinding speed and sheer strength. Even Sol admits that Lancelot is dangerous. If this fight continues, both Kim and Sol will die. Despite Lancelot's relentless attempts, he fails to break the barrier. Kim, however, notices something. Lancelot is very close to the barrier. A dangerous idea strikes him. If he launches his Ignite fireballs at such a close range, Lancelot will not be able to dodge. Kim wastes no time. He sends 5 high-speed fireballs directly toward Lancelot. But to his horror and amazement, Lancelot easily cuts through all the fireballs, even at point-blank range. The situation grows even more dire. Lancelot is not just strong, he is unstoppable. Seeing this, Kim is genuinely surprised. He thinks that it doesn't make any sense. Lancelot is so overpowered, strong, and fast that no attack is working on him. Kim observes how easily Lancelot is cutting through all the heavy metal as if it were butter. On the other hand, the Skeleton King watches the fight from behind, finding the entire scene dull. The Skeleton King remarks how boring this fight has become with a smug tone. The Skeleton King taunts Kim, questioning how long he plans to hide behind his barrier. He declares that Lancelot is a 7th-tier warrior, immune to all of Kim's abilities. According to him, no matter what Kim does, he can't defeat Lancelot. The Skeleton King sits arrogantly on his throne and reminisces. He reveals that he invested all his resources and wealth to come to Earth and thought summoning Lancelot was necessary to survive against Kim and Sol. However, now, as he watches their feeble attempts, he expresses his disappointment. If the Skeleton King had known how weak they were, he wouldn't have taken the risk of summoning Lancelot in the first place. As the Skeleton King watches closely, he notices something unusual. Kim is not using any magic. Instead, Kim is launching strange, weird items from his portal in an unlimited supply. Realizing this, the Skeleton King's eyes light up as he begins to form an idea. Kim, on the other hand, doesn't know what to do. He checks all his abilities: subspace laboratory, replicate extra large, subspace life support, but none seem useful to defeat the Skeleton King or Lancelot. Kim resorts to throwing Ignite bowling balls at Lancelot repeatedly, but Lancelot continues to cut through them effortlessly. Kim genuinely feels stuck. Suddenly, the Skeleton King laughs loudly. He commands Lancelot to halt his attacks, declaring that the two in the portal are not wizards, but potential partners for the Skeleton King's future plans. Lancelot, obeying the Skeleton King, retreats and approaches him. The Skeleton King walks away from his throne and slowly approaches Kim's portal. Initially, the Skeleton King thought Kim and Soul were wizards, but now, observing Kim closely, he realizes that they are normal humans. What's more, Kim has a very interesting ability. Kim, confused, wonders what the Skeleton King is talking about. The Skeleton King, with a sly grin, begins to explain. He mentions that Kim must have encountered skeleton knights on his way and likely killed 2 of them to obtain reinforced stones. These reinforced stones, the Skeleton King reveals, are produced only in this castle, a place known as Camelot. The Camelot Castle has a unique ability to create reinforced stones by sacrificing living beings. The Skeleton King shares that his original plan was to sacrifice the humans in the city to produce a large number of reinforced stones, which he would then use to summon an army of skeleton knights. But he proposes a business partnership with Kim. The Skeleton King suggests that Kim, with his unlimited copying ability, can duplicate the reinforced stones. Together, they could rule the entire Earth or even the universe. Kim stands there silently, processing the offer, while the Skeleton King laughs evilly at the prospect of his grand plan. Kim suddenly starts laughing and crying simultaneously. The Skeleton King is bewildered. Kim thanks the Skeleton King, saying that the Skeleton King has unknowingly solved all of Kim's problems. Before the Skeleton King can react, Kim speaks the 4 magical words. P.S. Put Camelot in subspace. In an instant, the entire castle vanishes before the Skeleton King's eyes. Camelot Castle, the source of his power, shrinks and disappears into Kim's subspace. The Skeleton King and the Skeleton Knights are left standing outside, confused and furious. The Skeleton King looks around, trying to comprehend where his grand fortress went as the Camelot Castle appears in Kim's hands, shrunken to the size of a toy. Soul casually remarks how small and insignificant it looks. Fuming with rage, the Skeleton King bellows, "How dare you, 9th-tier slave bastards!" He accuses Kim and Soul of ruining his lifelong plan and vows to kill them all. In his anger, the Skeleton King summons a purple ball of dark energy filled with the souls of the dead. The green, ghostly souls shoot toward Kim's portal, attempting to break through. But as the smoke clears, Kim and Soul remain unharmed. Kim, now calm, starts pondering. He remembers the name of the skeleton knight summoned by the Skeleton King, Lancelot. Kim decides to try something bold. He calls out Lancelot's name, attempting to summon him. To everyone's astonishment, Lancelot appears in front of Kim. But this time, Lancelot is not surrounded by his usual dark aura. Instead, he radiates a warm, golden light. Lancelot turns to Kim, acknowledging him as his new master. Kim orders Lancelot to kill the Skeleton King. Without hesitation, Lancelot immediately draws his sword, and with one swift and powerful slash, he cuts the Skeleton King clean into 2 pieces. The Skeleton King, unable to react or defend himself, is defeated instantly with a display of overwhelming power. Lancelot ends the fight with elegance and precision. This catches up with the latest installments of this story released so far, so please expect some delay before the next part gets released. If you've enjoyed this video, please consider to leave a like and subscribing to the channel. You can also support me further by becoming a patron or a member of the channel if you've got that extra dough. Check out some of my other similar series while you wait. Until next time,